Okay, the planning board is now in session. It is Monday, March 8th, 2021, 7 p.m. pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, 18, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order, imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting or participate in the public hearing may do so in the following manner. Again, it's www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So we have an agenda that was submitted to the town clerk on March 4th. And the first item on the agenda is a discussion item of the Master Plan Committee update. Mrs. Luttrell.
Thank you. Nothing new to update since our last meeting. We're meeting again this Wednesday, the 10th.
How is your attendance?
It's good. We've had a quorum, which is very helpful in moving things forward.
It's really great. Any questions or comments?
I can also say that Sarah's been diligently moving on the housing category chapter, working with Tom McCulier from Shopsy in order to get that as complete as possible for the Master Plan Committee. Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome. I like housing. I'm happy to be helping out.
Sarah has a lot of very helpful input on in the committee. We love having her.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a huge help.
Actually, is today International Women's Day?
Why, yes, it is.
So the planning board should acknowledge
Nice.
that, whether we're male or females, right?
Woo-hoo.
Motion to recognize International Women's Day and congratulate all the women that we work with, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been
Second.
made. Wait a minute. We need a guy to second it. Jesse,
Hey, how's it going?
welcome. We just started. We got the update on the Master Plan Committee and heard compliments to Sarah, which triggered my memory that today is International Women's Day. So just as you were joining us, the vice chair made a motion that the planning board recognize International Women's Day.
I
We thought it would be appropriate that a guy would second that motion. And then
Indeed.
we would expect the same motion perhaps on International Men's Day.
Is that even a thing?
I was going to say,
Definitely not a thing.
As
Right.
my wife,
That's every other day of the year.
as my wife said, that's every day. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
And Houlihan, an enthusiastic yes.
Motion carries. So
Unanimous.
we still have 5 minutes before the opening of the reopening of the public hearing for 96 Mount Vickery Road. So can we go to approval of minutes, February 11th and February 22nd.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes from February 11th, 2021 as written.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a couple little things.
Mrs. Luttrell.
Line 119, put the word minimum after 10%, so 10% minimum commercial. And then line 85, instead of the word residential on residential A and residential B, it's 174-8.12A and 174-8.12B. That's it. Thanks. Great job, Kate.
Sure, got it.
Any other questions, comments? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, those minutes are approved. We have the minutes of February 22nd. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the meeting minutes from February 22nd, 2021 as written.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Roll call vote. Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. We still have a couple of minutes. On the planners report, Karina, did you want to cover some of that?
Sure. Hold on, let me just grab it. Okay, just want to make you aware that the annual town meeting right now has been rescheduled to May 22nd. That's a Saturday, May 22nd, 2021 at 10 a.m. There was the Board of Selectmen rescheduled the annual town meeting to open at 10 a.m. on Saturday, May 22nd. The date was agreed upon in a discussion between selectmen, the town clerk, and the town moderator. The new schedule allows some more time to get the warrant ready. It sounded as though the board will still target April 20th for closing of the warrant, but they have more flexibility right now to push that out. So just in general, that's where it's headed, May 22nd.
And if the forecast is for rain or a hurricane or something, thunderstorms, are they able to push it out?
I think they are able to.
I mean, it would make sense, but
Mhm.
people knew that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're still operating under the state of emergency too, so that has its flexibility as well, so. Yes. I believe they would. We can confirm that though. There was one other thing related to that. Oh, a copy of a current town warrant. I think I circulated that. It's on the Dropbox too for reference. It's also on the town website, I believe. So if you want to take a look at that, you can see the status of that right now.
And that's for us and the whole, and the public.
Well, I know that I sent it to the planning board members. I'm not sure the town administrator posted it on the town website yet, but it could possibly be there. And you know it's the current one because it says annual town meeting, May 22nd, 2021 on the cover.
Okay. I see it's now 7:10 p.m. So we will reopen the public hearing, which is the next item on the agenda for 96 Mount Vickery Road. Definitive subdivision plan approval. This public hearing is continued from December 14th, January 11th, February 8th, February 22nd. Also reopening the public hearing for 96 Mount Vickery Road, lower impact development special permit. And this public hearing is also continued from December 14th, January 11th, February 8th, and February 22nd. We'll ask the town planner to give us an update. And I want us to know that the proponent has already submitted a request for a continuation, which is, in my opinion, appropriate, of the hearing and the approval date, approval period extension. So knowing that, we will handle tonight's part of the public hearing accordingly. Karina, Mr. Mills, hold on, wait, Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'm going to recuse myself due to a conflict.
Thank you. Karina,
Okay. See where, okay, so last planning board meeting, as Don mentioned, was February 22nd, 2021, where it was continued to this evening. On March 2nd, we received Fuss and O'Neill comments for their submission number 3, which are the plans dated February 18th, 2021. Those were distributed to the planning board and also to the applicant and his team for review. On March 5th, 2021, the Open Space Preservation Commission had a meeting in which 96 Mount Vickery was on the agenda. Today, we received comments from the fire department. Those were distributed to the planning board, Fuss and O'Neill, and the applicant as well, which brings us here this evening. I want to point out that something else here. Please note that Conservation Commission met on February 18th for their public hearings and approved 6 notice of intents in the stormwater management permit for the project. We also received some questions from planning board member Marnie Houlihan over the weekend. So we saw them this morning. And Sarah was able to answer question 1 of the 3 questions. And I'll be following up if on the second 2 questions, if they aren't answered for you tonight, Marnie, in the discussion during the public hearing. And in the attendees list, we have Michael Bartolini and Nathan Mahonen. Nathan Mahonen is with Bowler Engineering, and Michael Bartolini is the owner of the project. And that's what I have.
very good. Welcome back, Michael and Nathan.
Thank you.
What we'd like you to do, because it's been a while, is to briefly give the public an overview of the project using words and the screen, show the location of the road and the houses and all that stuff. And then update the board and the public on the changes that have been made since we last met.
Certainly. Give me one moment here. Let me pull up a plan that's a little more suitable for giving a general overview again of what the project entails. And I will share that now. Go. Says the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
You should be all set now. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Thank you. Go. Can everybody see this? Thank you. So just by way of a quick summary, to recap where we are, what the project entails is it's a single family subdivision located off of Mount Vickery Road at 96 Mount Vickery Road, which is the existing building that's up at the front here in this location here. The proposal is for a new 20-foot wide paved subdivision roadway with 6 single-family homes. The homes will be serviced by municipal water, local utility connections to electric, telecom, and the like, and they will each include individual on-site sewage disposal systems for sewer. Each lot has those individual locations demarcated on them as such. As noted, the applicant has filed for definitive subdivision application for the creation of the 6 lots in the roadway, as well as low impact development special permit under the town bylaws. Relative to updates since the last time we were in front of the board, just going to switch over to this and make sure that this is displaying for everybody as well, the colored plan here. Thank you. So since the last time we were in front of the board, the applicant has gone through some significant efforts to address comments from the board and submitted revised plans and information, calculations and the like, along with response to comments to both the planning board peer reviewer as well as the peer reviewers and the Conservation Commission. As Karina noted, that the project was previously approved at the last commission meeting with them. I'm going to go through some aspects relative to the LID and then some general aspects that were kind of discussed relative to the subdivision at the last meeting. So as noted, the plans and calculations have been revised and resubmitted. Additional information has been added to that as well to really outline how the project complies with each of the individual LID rules and regulations and the requirements of the bylaw itself. In particular, the project has been redesigned to include a roadside swale in this area here where you see the red dashed line. It's not letting me, there we go, through this area here. In lieu of traditional curbing, a waiver from the subdivision regulations has been requested to allow for that. So there'll be no curbing in this location where the swale is. There will still be curbing at the entrance radii and curbing at the cul-de-sac down below. Bioretention area has been added at the center of the cul-de-sac, kind of shown in this peach color here. This has been designed to capture and treat a portion of the stormwater runoff prior to conveying it over to the infiltration basin, which is shown in yellow in the corner here. An additional waiver has been requested for that implementation as well, as the rules and regulations require this area generally to be paved in its entirety. Revised information does include showing that fire truck apparatus can circulate the cul-de-sac appropriately so that there is appropriate access to the homes in case of an emergency. The project has also been modified to increase the amount of buffer between the project and the resource areas. That is this area shown in dark green over here. The wetlands and the previously undisturbed areas are shown in the lighter green here. And as you can see, the dark green expands those areas, those undisturbed areas, closer to the homes. This was achieved by placing all the homes right up against the front yard setback. So we're up at the minimum setback to the roadway. We incorporated 10-foot foundations in lots 1, 2, and 3, and minimized the amount of slope behind the buildings in order to reduce the amount of fill and the amount of area that was disturbed behind the homes. All told, this leaves about 1 acre of the buffer zone to the wetland, or about 40.1% of that buffer zone in its undisturbed, current vegetative state. We've also moved the home on lot 6 closer to the cul-de-sac and added this darker green area in here and this darker green area in here as undisturbed open area, in addition to this lighter green area, which was previously proposed to expand the amount of undisturbed area on the project. The existing dirt access road in this tan area here is going to be restored with a seed mix that will include a mix of grasses and wildflower pollinators to kind of, put this area as one undisturbed vegetated area and restore that section that's in there. The area adjacent to lots 5 and 6, again, shown in this tan area here, is going to be cleaned up of some of the debris and stuff that's left over from the previous use and operation of the site, and areas will be seeded as needed for restoration as well. Both of the areas, or all the areas shown in dark green, equate to about a 0.36 acre increase of undisturbed undisturbed land from the previous submission. And really the last kind of LID technique that we added to the site is the implementation. You'll see these rectangular blue areas on each of the lots. Those are underground infiltration systems designed to capture and infiltrate rooftop runoff for the homes for the 1-inch storm event. This will help to provide additional infiltration throughout the site. And the stormwater report and calculations that were submitted detail these, as well as an operation and maintenance plan to make sure that those features are reflected in the O&M plan for the subdivision. The changes, all in told, help protect the water quality. They reduce impervious area, minimize land disturbance, and protect resource areas, all components in line with the LID bylaws and provisions. The standalone document, LID management plan, it's quite lengthy. I won't go through in detail, and that's in there unless there's specific questions, but that was updated to reflect the current plans and calculations that were submitted and provide some additional detail and description relative to what I outlined here tonight and how those comply with the LID principles and the bylaw. As part of these implementation and review of the bylaw, the applicant is actually formally requesting a waiver from one portion of the LID requirements. It touches on 3 specific criteria, but it's one portion of the regulations. That deals on the use of roof gardens. In lieu of doing the roof gardens, the applicant is proposing the underground roof systems to promote the infiltration. Roof gardens aren't really typical or really marketable on the single family homes. The second part of that would be the use of amended soils. The site has very well draining granular material based upon the soil testing that was done for the septic systems as well as the infiltration basin. And the use of amended soils really isn't needed on the site to promote infiltration. And the last one that was listed in there was the use of permeable pavement. Permeable pavement, it doesn't meet the subdivision requirements for construction of the road, nor do we think it would possibly be accepted by the DPW for operation and maintenance of the roadway. And it's not ideal for use on single family driveways due to the maintenance requirements of those driveways themselves. So in addition to the LID measures, as I noted, there's a couple of items outside the LID that were talked about at the last meeting that I wanted to run through and also kind of touch base on what was discussed at the open space meeting last Friday. So the first thing, kind of recap from the last meeting, is the board. We had discussed locating and showing trees on the site. So the plans that were revised and resubmitted do show the location of mature trees, 12 inches in diameter and greater, both conifers and deciduous trees. And as noted at the last meeting, and as you can really see is reflected on the plans that were submitted, the site was formerly used as a commercial logging facility. The majority of the deciduous trees were previously removed from the site, and most of the remaining larger trees are conifers. So as I noted, the deciduous and conifer trees that are anticipated to be maintained are noted on the plans, and that the location of the conifer trees are really small groupings of a few trees or tree locations kind of along the perimeter away from the site homes. Individual locations kind of smattered within the lots near the homes were not shown, as conifers tend to have a shallower root system. They spread out like a plate away from the base of the tree. And if you leave one or two of them kind of standing by themselves, they're acceptable to blow down in heavy storms, and you get safety hazards for the newly constructed homes. All told on the plan, we're showing that approximately 80% of the existing deciduous trees within the upland area are being maintained, and approximately 50% of the total amount of existing trees within the upland area is being maintained. And then to add to that, we are proposing 31 deciduous street trees in accordance with the subdivision regulations, which is actually, once they're all planted and grown, it'll be about 9 more deciduous trees on site than what actually exists there today. So as Karina noted as well, we did meet with the open space committee last Friday. From the meeting, they did give us a 3-0 favorable vote on the plans that were submitted, but they did request a few minor changes. A couple of them are already on the plans. I don't think they just happened to notice them in their review, but I'll call out all four in particular. So the first two were specify the plantings for the bioretention area in the cul-de-sac, and the second was specify plantings in the basin. Both of those are on the current plans that were submitted. The plantings for the bioretention area are actually on the grading and drainage plan I have shown here. There's an inset in the corner that details the plantings and seed mix that's to be used in the bioretention area. And the erosion and sediment control plan outlines the seed mixes to be used on the infiltration basin itself. Kind of dovetail with the infiltration basin, they did ask one change there. There are areas along the perimeter of the site where we have agreed with the Conservation Commission to reseed with New England Conservation and Wildlife mix. They actually asked that we extend that into the basin itself and stabilize the side slopes of the basin with that same conservation seed mix. And the applicant is agreeable to making that a condition of approval on the plans. And the last item that they asked is that we did note on the plans that the trees within the limit of work that we're targeting saving, they may not be able to be saved once we get out there under construction, depending upon health of the tree and so forth. They just asked that if there are trees within the limit that we do need to take down, that we find a spot on the particular lot and plant a new tree in its place. The applicant is also agreeable to making that a condition of approval, and they have agreed to do that with the Open Space Committee. A couple other minor updates. The plans have been revised to show red oaks for street trees within the right-of-way. This is a species listed on the town of Southborough street tree guidelines. And it is also in the Gagir pollinator list, which was a list of plantings that was recommended by the Open Space Committee that we utilize and take a look at. Staying on the topic of landscaping, the applicant noted at the last meeting that they'll be landscaping each individual lot, obviously. We want to put in writing and speak tonight that they're not proposing to install any invasive species and that they have submitted a comprehensive list of anticipated plantings to be used on each lot. That was included in the LAD management plan. Those lists that list represents a list of anticipated species to be chosen from. Ultimate selection of species and quantity would vary per lot, depending upon a few things. One, existing vegetation to remain on said lot, requests from individual homeowners for particular species or trees or plants from that list, and product availability from local nurseries. So sometimes when you're going to do the lot, certain products or plantings aren't available. In addition, that list also does include plantings from the Gagir pollinator list as well. Those were recommended native pollinator plants from the Open Space Committee as well. So we decided to include that in the list of plant species to be chosen from. And a couple other minor things relative to kind of process and procedure. The plans not only show the 12-inch and larger trees, they do also show all trees within the Mount Vickery right-of-way, regardless of size. It's noted right now that the project does not propose to remove any of the trees within the right-of-way. And it is understood by the applicant that should any tree removal within the right-of-way be proposed at a future time, that a separate permit from the board is required to do so, and they will request that permit should it be required. But again, right now, they're not proposing to remove any trees within the right-of-way. And lastly, just to kind of clarify, this was a comment at the last meeting relative to the application for subdivision. It talks about a 2-year timeframe commitment from approval. And in particular, the application reads, the undersigned agrees to complete all required work within 2 years from the date of said approval becomes final and will furnish security for the timely performance of said construction and installation to serve the lots within said subdivision. This is really interpreted on our end as being required to complete the construction of the roadway, utilities, stormwater infrastructure, essentially all the infrastructure required to serve the lots within the subdivision, and that the construction of the individual lots would occur on a lot by lot basis as market demand really dictates. And in that being said, there may be further discussions on that interpretation or discussion on that point. But as part of that, in the resubmittal, the applicant has requested that that timeframe be extended to a 3-year period rather than a 2-year period. So that's really it by way of updates to the plans and the submitted material. Touch on a couple of quick other items. Again, Karina noted that the Conservation Commission did approve and issue the order of conditions for the homes as well as the roadway and their stormwater management permit under the local bylaw. We did receive those comments from Fuss and O'Neill as noted. In reviewing them, the letter basically summarizes the requested waivers and defers to the board relative to those waivers and the LID management special permit. And they did summarize at the end that they did basically provide their general agreement with our approach relative to the LID waivers for the roof gardens, the soil amendment, and the permeable pavement. And lastly, as Karina noted again, we did get comments forwarded to us from the fire department kind of late this morning. Gave a read through those, haven't had a chance to formally respond in writing, but we did give a read through them, and we are in compliance with the items that are listed and being requested in that letter. Nothing in there requires a plan change or anything of the like. Some of them are construction related, like size of the house numbers on the road and so forth like that, to make sure you're in standard compliance with those regulations. But we do comply, or will comply with all of those requirements that are listed by the fire department. So outside of that, we'd like to thank you again for your time tonight and presenting it. Is a little bit lengthy of an updated, a little bit of a lengthy presentation for everything that was updated and provided. But we're happy to, turn it back over to the board and answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Thank you, Nathan. Excellent update. Very thorough. I think I'm going to ask Mrs. Houlihan to go first since you had some questions.
Sure. So I think the two questions that I didn't see addressed on the Fuss and O'Neill letter dated March 2nd, you had requested waivers for 24422B curbs and berms and 24413A11 on streets and the requirement for the circular turnaround with a pavement radius of 50 feet. So I was just hoping that you could kind of provide a little bit more clarity on the curbs and berms. So you responded with vertical granite curbing will be provided at the entrance radii in accordance with the regulations, and Cape Cod berm will be utilized around the outside of the cul-de-sac. So I think I just need clarity as what the difference is between a vertical granite curbing versus rolled bituminous, whatever that word is, or Cape Cod berm, according to our bylaw.
Yeah, so my understanding of read through of the bylaw is that the entrance as you come in, these initial radii that you come into the site need to be your vertical granite stone curbing. And then as you get into the site, you can get into your asphalt bituminous curbing, which is more of, there's a couple different types. You have your flatter type, or you have your kind of rolled, looks almost like a bread loaf type of asphalt curbing. So we're asking for a waiver from the installation of the bituminous curbing or asphalt curbing where we're putting the roadside swale. So essentially the road will just pitch from one side to the other and into the swale that's there, and then down to a drainage inlet structure and over to the infiltration basin.
Okay, thanks. That helps me quite a bit. And then on 24413A 11th Street, so the circular turnaround in our bylaw requires a pavement radius of 50 feet unless the board approves some other. So I know the fire department came back and said you had to comply with specific regulations. And I just wanted to know if you knew what that compliance is to be able to do a turnaround with both a fire truck and a school bus. Because I know you indicated on your response that it would be big enough for a fire truck.
Correct. So the plans that were submitted, so it's a setback for the regulations. The regulations require a 50-foot paved radius or 100-foot diameter across the cul-de-sac. The proposal is for a 25-foot wide paved travel lane around the cul-de-sac, with the center island being landscaped for the bioretention area. The submitted documents that we provided showed a ladder truck for the fire department, making the turning movement around the cul-de-sac bulb with plenty of movement and area. They asked us to take a look at the Asheville bus 45, I believe it was, and make sure that that cul-de-sac bulb could accommodate that. Again, we haven't had a chance to respond with anything formally in writing as the comments were received today, but we did look at that additional vehicle earlier this afternoon, and it does, the cul-de-sac bulb does accommodate the movement for that vehicle around it.
Nathan, will you be able to provide a sketch of that turning
We will.
movement
We would, yes.
so we can have it on file if anybody asks?
Yes, absolutely.
Hold on one second. I just want to check my other notes that I had. I think that other question that I raised, Karina, number 2, I don't need to ask. And then, so I think I'm good on my questions, the detailed questions. And thanks for the very thorough update, Nathan. That was really helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
No more questions.
This is
for me,
Houlihan.
Liz.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Luttrell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the increase in the buffer area and the reduction in the grading, the preservation of the trees. The plant list is awesome. I have a couple of questions. There's a 32-inch deciduous tree that's outside of the limit of clearing on lot 6 in like the northeast corner that's slated to be removed. Do you know why?
Cluck. Just trying to situate myself as to which one that is. Is that a lot 6? You said 32-inch diameter?
Yeah, over by the stone wall.
Yeah, all these, that may just be a typo on the plans. Everything adjacent to the stone wall in this area is proposed to remain, but I'll check that to make sure that there's nothing misdesignated along this stretch here.
Oh, okay. So the way I read it, the darker marks were staying and the lighter ones were being removed. Is that?
No, it's actually reverse of that. My apologies that that was unclear on there. The trees to remain are the darker ones.
Yeah.
And the ones to be removed are the lighter color.
Correct. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
those along the stone wall are all light.
Yeah, I think they're just not showing up very well. Everything within this stretch here, outside the limit of work, should be to remain. I think it's just a plot of the PDF.
Okay.
But I'll make sure that that's clear on the plans, even if I have to label them individually as to remain.
And how will the trees that are slated to remain be protected during construction that are within the limit of work?
The initial thought is to put up an orange tree protection fence around those areas to denote that those are to be protected and to remain. Outside of that, the contractor is going to have to work with the developer to make sure that those are designated and maintained in a healthy condition.
Okay.
Nathan, did you provide us a PDF of this color plan?
I did not know. I can provide one for your files, though.
Okay, super. Just email it to Sarah if you could.
Absolutely.
Or me.
And where's the wildlife seed mix being planted?
It is in, excuse me, it is in this area over here, really in the back area over here. And then there is a portion up over here as well.
And how will those areas that of the increased buffer be preserved going forward so they aren't mowed down?
So during construction, they're going to be marked off with erosion sediment control fencing and so forth, so that, you know, demarcates the limit of work for the contractor. The Conservation Commission has asked us to install markers along the 20-foot no-touch zone for the wetland to help identify the limits of those areas for the future homeowners.
Okay, but a lot of this increased buffer area is outside of that 20-foot no touch. And it provides a benefit to the environment and to the health of the wetlands, you know, moving forward. So how in the future will the homeowner know not to, you know, cut down trees and plant grass in those areas, which does not have an environmental benefit?
So any work within that dark green area is also subject to a permit from the Conservation Commission because it is all within the 100-foot buffer zone. So any work being done back here should be done and permitted through the Conservation Commission as well.
Okay. And
How will they
would
know where they are? Yeah, I was just gonna say, reinforce Mimi's question, but how will they know that they're impacting it to?
Well, I mean, that goes back to the markers along the 20-foot. The Conservation Commission order of conditions requires the markers. It didn't require any delineation along the areas outside the 20-foot.
So usually before anyone buys my houses, they usually ask these questions beforehand. To be honest with you, they're gonna fully well know that they're in the 100-foot buffer. I mean, you have, we have an order of conditions. I have to get a certificate of compliance. It'd be pretty hard pressed for them to say that they aren't aware of where their house is located. So that's how I mean, for anyone in the town, I mean, if you're in a wetland area, and I would say the vast majority of this neighborhood is, they're all pretty aware of where their work is located and what, you know, their backyards are in the 100-foot buffer.
And to Mike's point on the certificate of compliance, that does get recorded along with the deed chain for the properties. That would be included in the documents in the transfer of land.
So one would hope people would know, but I've seen many times where people, homeowners do things and then go to the commission begging for forgiveness. Was just hoping to avoid that. At our last meeting, there was a discussion that vegetative screening between Lot 2 and the abutter to the west would be planted. Is there any detail on that?
I don't think we added any detail, but I think what we said was we were going to put screening from the list that we had. Oh, sorry, I'm using my mouse and I can't do it. So I think we were going to put screening kind of like a cluster in between 2, and I think that's 172. We also said we would do some screening between house number 1 and I don't know which number, but Terry and Alex's house on Mount Vickery. So I think it's 92. I'm not sure. Or 91, I'm not sure, but in that area there.
So I think the board asked to have some better understanding of what that would be, so there's no misunderstanding. Is it going to be trees and shrubs,
It's
or
going to
a couple
be
daisies, or what?
no, it's going to be evergreen trees, and it's going to be from the lists that we gave. So I think on number 2 and number 1, it's going to be some sort of evergreen from the list that we provided, or the gear list. The restoration area will have the restoration. Those things will all be from the gear list that Open Space gave us. So it's yeah, I haven't narrowed it down to an exact evergreen tree, but it's from those lists. It'll be native. It won't be. I just think I'm gonna need some sort of height on the western side more so than on the eastern side in terms of screening.
Okay. Do you know how many trees you're thinking?
Usually I like to see, I don't know yet. Usually I like to see what I can save naturally and then plant according to what's gonna look best and what hides the most. I don't have an exact number, no. I do know it's supposed to be dense, so enough that my customer's happy and the neighbors are happier. So
Is the footprint of the home smaller? It looks smaller than on the previous plan.
yes, they are.
Yeah, there are revised footprints on all 6 lots.
And the last thing I would request, if any of the trees that are slated to be saved that are within the limit of work, in there between 12 and 32 inches, if they could be replaced with 2 native 3 califer trees instead of just 1.
I would defer to Mike
there-
if you're okay with the 2-to-1 replacement.
I'm sorry?
I was gonna say, I'm gonna defer to Mike with the 2-to-1 replacement.
2-to-1. Yeah, that's fine. 2 is fine.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stein.
There we go. Do fire hydrants appear on any of these plans?
Yes, they're on several of the plans, including the a utility plan in particular, but the hydrant on the site is right here at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Why the 3-year time frame?
Mike, you were looking for additional time frame on the subdivision requirement?
I'm just not going to start it right away. That was really it. I mean,
Okay. I just recall from other projects, people coming in to ask for extensions. I don't remember a proponent asking for an extension before we've even approved the project. That's why I asked. It just it hasn't happened before, and just curious what the reason was. But I guess we can come back to
Sure.
that.
We're planning on going to one of those projects that asked for an extension. So I'm trying to do that one first and then get back to this one. That's really the idea behind it. So instead of coming before you then, I just figured it'd be better to do now.
Okay. So it's your own pipeline, basically, of work.
Essentially. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not gonna like start it and leave it. It's just, we're been here for a long time, not really going anywhere. It just seemed logical to ask for it now as opposed to, a year from now or whatever.
Have you guys submitted the septics to the Board of Health?
Those haven't been designed to submit it to Board of Health yet, no.
Okay.
We did get a report, Jesse, from the Board of Health, generic terms that they're required to provide some feedback. That was back in December 16th.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And what's the final percentage of protected open space?
The protected open space is 10% in accordance with the subdivision regulations.
Yeah, okay. Do we have, I guess this is a question for Sarah Karina. Do we have a letter from the Open Space Commission from their vote and their meeting and their comments?
Not yet. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say we haven't received anything formal yet. I just reviewed the tape.
Okay, that's it for me, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. I think that 3-year, I agree with Mr. Stein. I don't think anyone's ever asked for that up front. And of course, we would, I think the board, in order to be consistent and fair to applying the rules to everyone, would deny that. But understanding that the 2-year requirement is one that protects the neighborhood from a everlasting construction project where you take, 2 years to put in the road, and then another couple of years to build a house, and then another couple of, and next thing you know, the neighborhood has construction vehicles, backup alarms, dust going on for many years. And that's the reason why that is a requirement. So if we look at the intent of it, which is to reduce the window of time that the neighborhood is subjected to construction vehicles, noise, dust, and all that, to start it, to postpone the start and then start the clock ticking for the 2 years, that may be consistent with the intent of the bylaw, and it also may be helping the neighborhood. So I think that's something that we should think about. As far as the other waiver requests, not sure if the board wants to go through those tonight. We still have four public hearings after this tonight, but we would, and I think I would like to maybe do a little bit of research into possibly granting that waiver. Along with the waiver, I would recommend that we have the town planner talk to the DPW superintendent relative to this curbing waiver, because I think, Michael, you indicated that the DPW wouldn't accept the impervious pavement. So that tells me that you intend, of course, to have this be accepted as a public way in the town of Southborough. So we want to get DPW's input on the curbing situation, which leads me to sheet C9C-902, if you can put that one up, Nathan.
2.
Or the one before it. Yeah, let's go to the one before that first. I want to help out Mrs. Houlihan a little bit. So if you, this is the detail sheet for various construction elements within the roadway. So in the extreme upper left, we've got that Cape Cod type berm, which shows the subbase, the base, and the wearing course of the roadway, and then that Cape Cod slanted asphalt at the edge of the road. And then if you look down on the bottom, we've got the granite curb detail, which shows the same roadway construction, subbase, the base, the wearing course, intersecting with a vertical granite curb. And the granite curb is being proposed to be at the entranceway. Do we have any catch basins? Yes, we do. Any curbing at catch basins is supposed to be granite, if I'm right. There we go.
Yeah, we do call for that on the catch basin there with the granite curb inlet.
So, and then on either side of that piece of granite that backs up the inlet, it feathers down to some other type of curb is what you're proposing, which would be the Cape Cod asphalt type berm. Is that right?
Correct.
So let's go to the next sheet, 902. So down on the bottom, we have a bioretention basin. And it looks to me like that's a cut and paste that shows a typical bioretention basin and how it's intended to function, which is fine. But if you look on either side, to the left or the right, it shows a different type of materials or conditions on either side of that basin. And I don't think any of them apply to where we're putting the bioretention basin. So if we go back to the first page that you had on tonight, the one with the colors. So we know what, and what I'm asking, I think for clarity and certainly for the record, would be to pick can't really see it that clearly, but pick a station along the road, probably up between, like, let's say, house 1 and 2, and do a cross section of the roadway, which I guess would show on the west side of the roadway a grass, and then I guess a Cape Cod berm, pavement, 20 feet of pavement, and then grass that would slope down to that swale. Is that right, Nathan?
So the plans do show a typical cross-sectional detail for stations as you come in off of the entrance down to the end where you get to the curb. So it does show the the cross pitch. The road's pitched, cross pitched to one side. So curbing isn't required on the upper end. And on the lower end where we were having curbing, we're now requesting the waiver to the grass swale. If something similar to that would help in addition to that typical detail for the bioretention through the cul-de-sac area in here as well, we could do one there as well.
Yeah, I guess I missed that one on 901 at station 0 plus 00 to 5 plus 00. I'd like to,
Area there.
do you know if the DPW director has seen that? Or do you have a green light from her to do this?
So it's my understanding is the plans as they're submitted or distributed to, department heads for review and comment. And we haven't received any comments from the DPW to my knowledge.
All right, well, I think what we'll do in the time we have would be to chase that down and make sure we have a clear green light from DPW that this arrangement for that 500 feet of roadway is okay. And then back to what you just said, yes, I think you should give us a complete cross-section of cutting right through the middle of the cul-de-sac from one side to the other, from the grass on one side to the grass on the other, cutting right through the detention basin, the bioretention basin, so we can see, because we've seen these, the older ones in town. And by the way, the planning board, I think, has been consistently liking these 100-foot diameter cul-de-sacs that would have some type of green space in the middle instead of this massive sea of asphalt. And we've had great success around town with these, with some type of green space in the middle, whether it's functional or just to break it up a little. In this case, it's both. It's functional and it'll provide some green space. But we see some of these roundabouts where instead of a Cape Cod berm or a concrete or granite vertical curb surrounding the island, we're seeing these bricked. There's a transition from the paved road up with bricks to the planted area in the middle. So in this case, it looks like you're having pavement. I'm not sure from the detail if you have a curb to define it, or if you plan to put one there, and what type of curb it would be.
The inside does not have any curbs. It's basically allowing the stormwater to sheet flow off the pavement and into the bioretention area. So the side slopes are stabilized with a seed mix, and the bottom of the basin is stabilized with the proposed plantings that are listed in the detail.
So does that mean that the paved part of the cul-de-sac pitches inward?
So it means that basically from this red line up, this area here, it'll help to kind of define it a little bit better, that this area here is designed to really drain directly into it. The lower area is designed to drain towards that catch basin that's shown at the end of the cul-de-sac that's against the curbing with the gutter mouth, the granite inlet. And that's just the roadway. There are some areas from the lawns that are graded towards the front of the road that would contribute and go into that bioretention area as well.
I think we need to have a good detail of that, because I can just saying, which would be the water would, and then if there's any kind of a lip, mound of sand or ice or snow, that it's going to stay on the pavement and work its way around the bioretention area. I guess depending on the steepness of the grade, that would vary. So I'd like you to take a look at that and give us that cross section if you could.
We could certainly add that.
And sooner than later, because I'd like to really have a comfort level for the planning board that the DPW is okay with it. And if it's really a good idea, then maybe we would incorporate it. The DPW and the town would, similar type design. So the waivers, no, also on this sheet, those little blue recharge structures, were those on the, are those new, were those on the plan the last time?
No, those are new with this submission that was recent.
Oh, okay. I suppose there's a detail for that.
There is, it's a typical detail for the StormTech SC 310 chambers.
Is that on 902?
Yep, that's on the bottom corner of 902.
Oh yeah. Oh, you have the Caltex in there.
The StormTechs, yes. It's the plastic
Okay.
arch chambers. Yep.
Okay. I can't read it. Does it say the capacity and the size?
So it has the information for the units on there. The grading and drainage plan calls out the particular number of units to be installed in each location.
And I believe, maybe I misunderstood, but did you say a few minutes ago that you've reduced the footprint of the houses?
Yeah, I believe Mike chimed in and said that the footprints were smaller with the new footprints we have on here.
Do you know what the percentage reduction is?
That number, I don't have it off the top of my head, no.
It's less than 50%.
Yeah, it's not a 50% reduction in the footprint size, no.
Would we say 20%, 10%?
I'd have to overlay them to get you a closer number.
Well, it must be not a tiny number, like 1 or 2 square feet, because some of the more eagle-eyed planning board members observed an apparent difference. So I think that's the kind of thing, in addition to the other things that you did, that we were looking for at our last meeting as far as taking the lid seriously. And it seems like you've made major steps in that direction. So much so, I guess, that the conservation has given you the green light. And you're not hearing a whole lot of critical comments from the board tonight. I'll ask the board, do we want to go through these waivers? Again, I don't want to do the 3-year waiver, and I don't want to do the curb waiver without DEP, but the others have to do with the groundwater elevation, the tying into the 1-foot contours with reference to the NGVD 1929 survey, maximum groundwater elevation, hydraulic budget. I think the emergency response plan seems to be intended to be included in the stormwater pollution prevention plan, but that's something that we would also have to approve or grant. The waiver of the sidewalks. So I'll ask the board, do we want to go through some of these tonight? None of them? And I would recommend the ones that I want to defer Mr. Stein?
I think we would wait until the next meeting to go through these.
Mrs. Latrell?
I agree with Mr. Stein.
And Mrs. Houlihan.
I'll agree with my colleagues.
So what we'll do, I'll open this up to the public at this point. It's, I think it says it's 11 minutes past 8 o'clock. Been on this for an hour. Open it up to the public. Any questions or comments?
Yep, Freddie Gillespie's here, and I'm just gonna allow her to talk. Freddie, you just need to unmute and you should be all set.
Hi, thank you. And will you mute me when I'm done, please?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, and we haven't written the letter yet. We met Friday, and both Michael and Tony Bartolini joined the Open Space Commission, and we reviewed the plans. We were quite impressed with some of the changes they've made, the increase to the limit of work. We didn't like and continue not to like the narrow strips for open space, but you know, it meets the requirements of the bylaw, and with the additional buffer from working right up against it, we thought there was less likelihood of it being disturbed, as in other subdivisions we've seen where there may be an open flat meadow, and you know, it's an encouragement to just keep on mowing because this is on a slope and they're leaving all the trees there. So the other thing, and Michael, you've referenced it, but there was one difference between what our recommendation was, which is a, sorry, let me just grab it. We had discussed if any tree were removed that is listed to remain, that it would be replaced with a tree with a 4-inch caliper or above. And I think you mentioned 3, unless there's a reason that the 3 is better. Our recommendation that Michael agreed to was 4. Is that correct, Michael? You said, I'm sorry, through the chair.
Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
okay. Yes.
So the 4-inch was agreeable. And I did have a question on, you know, during construction, a tree might come down, but I know in other ones, there's a timeline. Is that something the planning board automatically does? Like, say they do all the building and then, you know, within a year, the tree dies because of disturbed soil or something. Does that kick in for this replacement tree?
Yes.
Okay. So, overall, we had a very good conversation, and you know, we thought that the trees being proposed to remain was a little squishy, and we find that this replacement really satisfied our concern over that, and it seems like a good compromise, and it sounds like having 2 for the really large trees is even better. I did have like Michael said, we hadn't seen this. It was there, but we didn't see it. Actually, it wasn't Michael. Nathan mentioned it. We didn't see the seed mix. And I'm wondering if around the detention basin, sorry, I call it the infiltration. I'm trying to learn the right term. Infiltration basin that isn't already planned, which I believe the other seed mixes were approved by the Conservation Commission, that if you could add some of the New England wetland plant native seed mixes for the showy wildflower mix, not even doing the whole thing, but, you know, add a few pounds of that. If you're familiar with the conservation mix is mostly grasses, and there's a New England wildflower and a New England showy wildflower mix. If some of that could be added in, would be a request. Wasn't mentioned at our Open Space Commission meeting. I'm just putting it out there. And I think that's it. It was, again, 10%. The narrow strips just aren't really very good, but on this plan, it seems to work with the added buffer. So thank you.
Sorry, did Mike, did you answer Freddie's question about that showy seed mix? Showy wildflower mix? Because I think you were muted.
No, I was talking to someone next to me. Sorry.
Okay. So do you agree to what Freddie was asking, the open space was asking about the showy wildflower mix? A few pounds be added?
Yeah, I just want to check with my engineer just to make sure, because I don't know what's in it. So I just want to make sure I know what's in it, but I don't. It's an upland mix, correct?
Yeah.
If it's an upland mix, then I don't see a huge issue with it.
You can take a look. This was just something I saw when I saw the actual what was in the mix you're using, and compared to having a little, make the homeowners happy too, to see a few sunflowers there. There's a nice mix around one of the infiltration basins at Stony Brook, which really, shows how an attractive landscape you can get in addition to the ecological benefit. So you can decide that later. I just thought I'd ask it now. I'll send you a link to the list if you want.
Sure, I'll take it. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you very much for including the list. We're hoping a lot of those will show up in your plantings. It was a nod in the right direction, I think, overall. All these, the subdivision is way more than just the plantings, but you did a nice job there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Freddie, will you be including your questions in your comments from open space?
Unless we meet again, I will include what we discussed at our Open Space Preservation Commission. I can send another comment from myself.
Okay.
If you understand, we did not specify that in our meeting, and I don't like to give my own personal opinion as if it's coming from the commission.
Understood.
Not that we wouldn't discuss it at our next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else from the public?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, while we're going over this next piece, if someone does tune in from the public, you'll let us know, Sarah.
Sure.
So the current approval period for the definitive subdivision is March 20th, and for the lid is April 12th. Now, the proponent has submitted a request for continuation / extension of a public hearing, and it's to continue the public hearing to March 29th.
Yeah.
March 29th, and that the approval period on the matters, which I take to mean the lid and the definitive subdivision, shall be extended to April 16th. So before we can continue the public hearing, we need to extend the approval period. And that motion would be to extend the approval period for both the lid and the definitive subdivision to April 16th, 2021.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. It was seconded by Mrs. Latrell. So this is to extend the approval period. Roll call vote, Morris, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, the next action would be to continue the public hearing to 7:05 PM on March 29th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Mimi, you cut out. Could you do it one more time?
Latrell, yes.
Thank you. So, Michael, I will, and Nathan, Nathaniel, I will sign this and get it to the, this is your request. I will sign this and get this to the town planner. You gonna be in tomorrow, Karina?
Yes, I'll be there.
We'll try to get it to the town planner and then the town clerk tomorrow. And thank you for requesting that extension. So we all have a little bit of homework to do. Not much compared to what we talked about the last time. So seems like we're really making very good progress. Any more questions or comments before we entertain a motion to continue the hearing? Oh, we already did.
I have a couple quick questions. One question for you, Mr. Chairman. Isn't it precedent of the board to ask for sidewalks someplace else when a waiver is requested?
We've done that. We have. And again, maybe that would be of our research to see, you know, if it's a two-house subdivision, it's, you know, I'm not sure how often we would ask a developer to put in, you know, 100 feet of sidewalk someplace else. But if it's a, you know, 20, 30 house subdivision and it's waived and there's a need for it somewhere else, we have negotiated that. So I guess we'll take a look and see if what we have for a need for sidewalk and the developer's ability to grant any request that we may have to build a sidewalk somewhere else.
Okay. And the other thing I just wanted to clarify, Nathan, when I was talking about the trees that were slated to be removed along the sidewalk, I was looking at the big set of plans, not a PDF. So on those, they show up as being removed, everything along that side stone wall.
Yeah, as noted, we'll double check that and make sure that it's called out appropriately, but those are to remain.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? We voted to continue the hearing, 7:05, March 29th. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. Town meeting warrant article, amend section 174-10, site plan approval. This is continued from February 22nd, 2021. We'll ask the town planner to give us an update on any action relative to this public hearing and this proposed warrant article.
Okay, there has been no additional action or input or feedback that I'm aware of regarding the site plan approval bylaw amendment 174-10 regarding moving, eliminating site plan review committee and the planning board. Essentially, it's the planning board will cover minor site plan approval as described at the last public hearing. Sarah, did you get any feedback from anybody regarding this bylaw amendment?
I did not receive any feedback. There is a hand raised in the attendees. I'm not sure if it's for this particular item.
Andrew Dennington.
Yes. but I did not receive any other feedback.
Andrew, good evening.
Hi, Mr. Morris. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good to hear from you. What's up?
So I actually do have a comment on this, which I think would be Article 39 in the town meeting warrant. And my comment is about Section F, where there is a section that would strike the constructive approval provision. And I wanted to make this comment. I think that that is not advisable because the constructive approval language is, it provides a backstop that clearly says what happens if the planning board were not to act on an application. And it's very standard to have constructive approval language, and there's constructive approval language that governs applications for special permits and variances and comprehensive permits. And I know this is something that's more in your purview, but my understanding there's also, requirements on to act within a certain time for applications for relief under the subdivision control law. So I think that, I don't know if you've considered this, rather than striking that language about constructive approval, to instead lengthen the period of time that your board would have to act on an application from, say, 60 days to 90 or even 100 days. I think that's something that could, give your board plenty of time to act on an application, but still have the constructive approval backstop. And I know that when I was on the ZBA, I always found that the motivation to avoid a constructive approval is something that, effectively provides some protection to applicants, just to make sure that once a hearing starts or an application is filed, that there's going to be a decision, at least within some period of time. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And that, I think, is a good comment. My brain's telling me that we were advised by town council. I think you're right, relative to constructive approval, maybe with other boards, but I believe town council thought that this was peculiar to site plan. And I'll ask Karina if you remember, thought the deletion of this was reviewed by and recommended by town council.
That was my recollection as well, and I was trying to quickly review what the town council had provided. I just have 2 seconds here.
Sarah, do you remember?
That is my recollection, that town council did encourage or at least support the removal of this particular line.
I thought his advice, Mr. Dennington, is saying that constructive approval is appropriate and commonly used for other boards' actions, including ours, but not relative to site plan. And that's why I think he either recommended or reinforced its removal. But why don't we take a look at that, and when we, if we continue this public hearing, which I would recommend, we can tell Mr. Dennington and the public why it is the way it is. Karina.
Yes, I actually found it. Town council had said the planning board should also really consider the planning board should also really reconsider any constructive approval provision for minor and major site plan approval as opposed to a recommended extension provision. Automatic approval after a date certain works against the planning board as an administrative agency. That was included in when he provided review of this article amendment, of this bylaw amendment.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Andrew.
My own comment would be, you've just seen, I just was watching the earlier part of your hearing, you've seen how your board is very well, used to working with how to deal with the constructive approval language, and just candidly, that didn't really make that wasn't very convincing to me. The explanation that was just provided there. So I guess, Don, what you were saying was that you were going to continue the public hearing and think about it, and that I appreciate your willingness to do that.
Well, it's the board's willingness to continue the public hearing, and your comment. I guess we will revisit this, your comment, along with any others that come up, and bounce them back to town council, and perhaps he could provide, or not, more detail on why he thinks that it's better out than it is left in. And hopefully we may get to a point where you just don't agree, and we'll see what happens, or the board will make a decision as to if we feel it's better to have it removed or if it's better to leave it in. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Well, it already was to our attention, but your comment will result in a little bit more and discussion with town council. Anyone else? Anything else on this? So I think keep things moving. This public hearing and the next three tonight all involve zoning. And the rules are that the board is the town board that holds public hearings for zoning articles. And sometimes the planning board submits and recommends zoning articles to improve.
Don, you're breaking up and
And this is an
freezing.
example of that. The planning board has recommended, this is our article, we have recommended that that these revisions be made. So this is an example of the planning board initiating a draft warrant article, bringing it before our own board for public hearings, information, and closing the public hearing. And if at the end of the public hearing, the board feels that the article should continue to move to a vote at town meeting, then that's what happens. And if it survives a 2/3 vote, then the changes are accepted by the town. If it doesn't, then what was proposed is not approved, and what's in the existing code remains. So this is an example of the planning board preparing a draft article and then holding the public hearing. On the next public hearing, which I hope is in a minute or two, we'll have a different example of how it works. Any more questions or comments from the board or the public?
I do not see any additional hands raised.
So at our last meeting, I think we intended to keep this public hearing and others open as long as we can, right up to the town meeting, so that we maximize the opportunity for the public to look at the draft articles and provide comment. And as long as the public hearing is open, planning board can hear comment, make changes right up until town meeting.
Sarah,
So-
Tony, I'm sorry, Tony Bartolini is still a panelist, Sarah, just so you know.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Sorry for the
Okay.
interruption.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comments, no one from the public, then the appropriate thing would be to entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to 7:15 on March 29th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article amend section 174-10 site plan approval to March 29th, 2021 at 7:15.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you. We'll see you on the 29th. Is a meeting, amend section 174-9, special permit requirements, and 174-19, extensions or alterations. This public hearing is continued from February 22nd. We'll ask the town planner to give us an update.
All right, with this proposed bylaw amendment public hearing, we've also not received any additional input or feedback or comments from the public or otherwise to this point between the last meeting and now. So there hasn't been any new information, feedback, comment.
Anyone from the ZBA have anything to add tonight?
No, I see no hands raised.
I think the chair of the ZBA attended the prior public hearing as well on February 22nd. I think Dawn is frozen.
I think you're
I think so too.
Dawn, I think you froze. Give him a second, he's got to get back. There he is. There you go.
So you lost me there for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This is an example of another board other than the planning board submitting a warrant article relative to zoning. So again, the planning board is the board in the town that holds the public hearing for a draft warrant article proposed by some other entity other than the planning board. And in this case, it's the zoning board of appeals. So with no further questions or comments, no changes, we would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to 7:20 p.m. on March 29th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the annual town meeting warrant article amend section 174-9 special permit requirements for 174-19 extensions and alterations to March 29th, 2021 at 7:20 p.m.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Thank you. Sarah, I just got a box that said that my internet connection is questionable or something. So you might lose me.
Okay, well, hopefully not.
And if so, we know we have Andrew and the rest. Okay,
You take
next
it
item
over.
on the agenda is continued public hearing, annual town meeting warrant article, update section 174-12.1, outdoor illumination. This is continued from February 22nd, 2021. We'll ask the town planner to give us an update on this. And I know Sarah's going to be tuning in on this one too, right?
Yes,
I
I
have
was just
been.
gonna say,
Okay,
Sarah's handling this one really well, and I'm gonna let her defer to Sarah to give you an update.
Thank you. So the working group, Marnie, myself, and Dustin did have an opportunity to meet before the opening of the first public hearing. We've had a little bit of email traffic back and forth since then. Marnie was kind enough to take the first run at kind of a few additional edits for this round of public hearings. And so I can share that now. I don't know why everything's highlighted. So the enforcement piece, I'm sorry, I don't know why everything is highlighted here.
Try clicking somewhere on the screen
I'm
and
trying to,
nothing, huh?
no. Just 1 second, I'm just gonna. Gotta love technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna try to close it and open it back up again. All right, better. Okay. So really the enforcement section, is I think where, the working group is going to be likely focused in terms of revisions this time around to make sure that interdepartmentally, everyone has an understanding of what the process is. And there were some details written into kind of the original, many, many moons ago, start of this bylaw revision that really specifically laid out the process for enforcement. Town council and board of selectmen both kind of weighed in and, recommended kind of dialing that back to a reference to the enforcement section currently in the town code, and then to move any kind of administrative processes over into the rules and regulations. So that's, at this point, kind of what we're working on. So this would be the enforcement section that would be going into the bylaw, and then the rules and regulations kind of details in terms of administration will be, worked out in the next few weeks. Marnie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think the high level of this is that there is a discrepancy in kind of interpretation of enforcement. And so we needed to be very crystal clear that the illumination bylaw is for the town of Southborough. So we articulate in the very upfront that the town of Southborough is not just for industrial or commercial. It actually applies to the residential, as all of our town code does, but apparently we had to be very clear in this town bylaw update. So by doing that, we also wanted to provide clarity for enforcement, and that the owner of a property that is at the subject of a complaint would be the person or persons responsible for actually proving that their luminaire doesn't trespass and kind of impose any challenges to the bylaw. And so in the rules and regulations, we've tried to work an easy way to kind of be able for a homeowner to, or a landowner or a commercial owner to demonstrate that their property is in compliance with illumination. But we're hoping that with this clarity, it will be understood that when enforcement has to happen, the landowner actually has to be the person to prove it.
Marnie, are you saying that the person who has the complaint has to demonstrate that there's an issue? Or you're saying
No.
the person who's being complained against has to then defend themselves?
Correct.
To support Marnie's point, town council did opine, about this time last year, February, in regards to the outdoor illumination bylaw being applicable to two-family and single-family homes throughout Southborough. So, that this bylaw does apply, to the entire kind of contiguous area of Southborough.
Rena, is your question or concern raised around the fact that the burden of proof falls on the person who has the luminaire that's being questioned versus the person that's pointing the finger and saying your luminaire is imposing on my property?
Yes, that's correct. And I am concerned with that because in a little bit more tangible scenario is when you have a neighbor and his shed encroaches on your property line and you discover this. My experience has been that the building inspector doesn't say to the person with the shed who's partly on your property, prove to me that you're not on the shed. They ask the person who's complaining to say, well, show me that your complaint is valid. And so for my example, I had to take my mortgage plot plan at the time, present it to the building inspector and say, here's the property line. It was instrument surveyed. They showed the shed crossing the property. And therefore, the building inspector could then go to my neighbor and say, we have evidence that indicates the shed, here it is. And he mitigated it that way and he moved the shed. So that, because, you know, people can have all kinds of complaints and accuse many people. And, you know, you hope that doesn't happen, but then it's always the person being accused who has to prove himself innocent, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very fair comment, and I think worthwhile for Dustin, Sarah and I to kind of come back to and say, is this really the best way to do this? I think our challenge is that we did have a complaint in town of someone with light trespass, and she tried to prove it, but at the time, our building inspector said that she doesn't oversee residential luminaire violations.
Right. It's my understanding also that I wanted to also make this point too. And, you know, this is just me saying it through information that I know. But the building commissioner still has that opinion that, you know, single family and two family, or it doesn't apply to residential like that. And I think her concern is, and again, I'm speaking for her, so what I'm saying may not actually represent what she feels, but that it's difficult to enforce that. And it can be used in instances where people have a problem with their neighbor and they maybe want to cause a problem. So the onus is on the person who's complaining to hire a lighting specialist to take their meter and say, I'm standing at the property and this is the lumens or the foot candles I'm getting. And then, I don't know, the building commissioner could see if the bulb in the fixture that is the subject of the complaint meets the applicability of the bylaw. Because as you know, in the applicability section, it indicates a certain level of wattage or lumens that makes the bylaw applicable. So, you know, that's all back and forth, but I just wanted that out there. So just things to think about, what people might ask in the future.
Yeah, I think in a town that's 75% residential, for the building inspector to suggest that she doesn't cover that, that's a little concerning for me. So I think that's why we felt that it was important for enforcement. But I would agree that maybe we should reconsider who is who is required to burden of proof.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mills, Andrew.
Yeah, so in that respect too, if someone really, can the only person making a complaint be in a butter, or could anyone make a complaint? So theoretically, could we have someone going around and put in 50 complaints on all these different houses, and then, you know, or someone they just don't like, and that person then has to prove that they don't have light trespass, but it's not even a neighbor complaining?
Theoretically, yes. Because the purpose of the illuminating bylaw is to protect our night skies and really kind of embrace the whole premise for this illuminating bylaw is to basically have people embrace the Night Skies Initiative and help our environment and utilize lights that don't kill our environment.
Okay, thank you.
In your example, Andrew, the person that would go around and submit 50 different complaints, the way Karina proposes it, and what I agree with, is the burden of guilt or non-compliance would be on the person that submits the 50 complaints. They have to
Right.
go out and do that, as opposed to all 50 individuals to prove that they're innocent.
Right.
And also, in the case of light, you'd have to go over onto your neighbor's property to measure the light. And, yeah, you can measure it at the edge of your property, but it still might be, well, there's no proof that I can't prove that it's not on my neighbor's property unless I go over onto his property. So the burden really should be on the person that's lodging the complaint to verify that there actually is non-compliance. I would suggest you guys change that, Ronnie.
No, I think it's a totally fair comment.
Thank you.
Were there others that you wanted to go through, Sarah?
Nope,
Marnie?
that's it. Dustin is here though, and he does have his hand up, so I'm gonna allow him to talk, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Glad to hear from the professor.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and board members. It's good to see you guys again.
Welcome back, Dustin.
Yeah. So I just wanted to issue one brief comment on what we were just talking about. I think it's a good idea for the working group to mill this around a bit more. The one thing that I'm a little bit concerned with is having too high a threshold placed on the person who's issuing the complaint. For example, to have to measure light levels, I think is potentially unnecessary. With the new way that the lighting bylaw is written, it's pretty clear that light trespass is defined in ways where, if proper shielding is used, for example, a neighbor should never be able to see the actual bulb in the luminaire. Otherwise, it's not properly shielded. Pretty much the definition of how the light path is controlled is that there's some sort of a shield between the bulb and the neighbor's yard, right? Such that it's controlling the light path. So there shouldn't be any way that you would be able to visibly see the bulb of a luminaire if everything is okay. So I think it could be a question of in addition to the luminaire not being shielded properly, it's an exceptionally bright light, but the simple physics of light trespass just dictates that if you can see the bulb in their luminaire from your property, then there is trespass. So I think I'm just worried that if we hold a high bar, for example, making someone pay for a lighting specialist to come in, which I've actually dug into and is not an easy thing to do. I'm not even sure if it's available to everyone. I think there are some lower hanging fruits that can yield whether a complaint is feasible or not.
That might tie into the discussion about the enforcement piece. So let's say the building inspector, zoning enforcement officer says, no, it does pertain to residential properties. So now we've got someone who agrees that they are responsible for enforcing. So maybe the next step would be, okay, how do you propose to measure non-compliance? And I guess thanks to your input or the zoning enforcement officer's knowledge of this type of thing, there would be a method proposed that would be used. And unless, I guess unless the selectmen, who are her boss, would object to that, or Board of Health or somebody else, then that would be the defined method of measuring compliance. And if it's determined that it's a light meter or some really expensive thing, then there'd probably be pushback. Or the building inspector could determine that she's the umpire. And if she thinks it's a trespass, then that's it. No more discussion. She has the authority to make that call. And then recommend a fix, recommend actions to become in compliance. So it seems like it would be a blend of what your experience and recommendation might be, and getting the issue of having an enforcement of residential and who is going to enforce that. I mean, the selectman might say, no, the building commission doesn't have the resources to do all of this. It's way too much of a load, but we will hire a company, or we will hire a part-time person to just do lights for the town. I doubt if they'll do that, but there's other ways of getting it enforced, and we need to get that cleared up. Especially, I mean, if we're pushing on this and we want it to be residential, then we got to find a way to make it work.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Just, it's a small thing, but in Aldo's legal opinion, he did state that the current bylaw applies to residential homes. So whether this new revision passes or not, I think there's still, potentially, something to be understood kind of across the board about the application of this bylaw, because Aldo did say twice that the current bylaw applies to single and two-family residential homes.
So that would probably be the next step, and it might be a parallel path, which would be to get town council to either agree that there's enough language in there to make it clear that it does apply to residential, or have him recommend new language, additional language that would make it clear that it does. And then the parallel track would be to have the selectmen decide if they want to have our building inspector be the enforcement arm for this bylaw. I mean, if we were the building inspector and somebody put this on me, or you might say, there's no way I can do it. I just don't have enough people. I don't have enough time. And that might be fair. We don't want to, if this is what the people want, then the town has to find a way to make it enforceable. There's more than one way to do it.
And I have a question on the, Destin, when you're talking about, shielded lights, say you have like a carriage light at your driveway, or you have carriage lights on the outside of your door. Those are often not shielded. That I know, and I've seen, I'm driving around my neighborhood, it's clear glass, and at night, if you're expecting company, you turn those lights on so they can find their way up to the door. It just clarified, does that include those types of lights as well?
Well, I mean, I have to go back and look at the details of how we've written the bylaw, but I mean, it's pretty clear that, if it is a carriage light that has glass all the way around it, there's a potential for it to encroach on other people's property. Although if that's in the front, and most people have those in the front of their house, where it'd be shining out past your property line into the public way, there wouldn't be an issue with that. It would be if someone had a carriage light or a spotlight, something, but it also has to, this bylaw is not intended to to fire up this whole policing aspect of lighting. It's simply to give us a more responsible mechanism for controlling our lighting toward these larger efforts that Marnie was talking about. I think this does come down to playing nice with neighbors. And I think if someone did have a carriage light in the back of their house that was shining on somebody else's yard, which it would have to, if they can, if it's not shielded, it would have to be shining and illuminating the whole backyard. Past 10 p.m., all these other things, that if somebody issued a complaint about that, I would hope that the bylaw would help to cover that.
The other thing is like spotlights, for security reasons, people have spotlights that are triggered by motion sensor or heat sensor. And, you're sleeping at night and you use those because you want to see if someone's approaching your house. You can't really shield those, not that I'm aware of. So I'm just kind of putting these objectives out there for potential questions that might come up.
Well, I believe the bylaw covers motion lights.
Okay, so it does.
And it says that those motion lights are fine as long as the light comes on transiently. It's not on all night, things like that. I'm pretty sure we have that covered.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right, as I recall now. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, just trying to field all the objectives so there's no reduce the deer in the headlight questions.
Go ahead, Mimi.
Back to the enforcement issue, just to be clear, I don't think that this bylaw is adding any additional burden to the current zoning code enforcement officer. The zoning code enforcement officer is charged with enforcing all of our zoning code. And so the bylaw, the way it's written now, it applies to residences, and there's this particular building inspector doesn't agree with that, but this bylaw has been in effect for many, many years and has not created a burden to the building inspector.
We agree that the bylaw has always meant residential. So we did add clarity of language, though. Aldo did suggest in that feedback to us that we could be more clear if it really does seem ambiguous to people, but the intent is to cover residential.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Mimi was saying, because the current bylaw has been in effect so long, and because town council has weighed in to say that this does cover residential, and because we have a long history of how many complaints we typically get about lighting trespass, I wouldn't expect that because we're not changing anything there to get an uptick in complaints just because. I think that we'd probably find that complaint record is pretty low and would stay low.
Well, we have a difference of opinion as to what it applies to. And we're not the building inspector's boss. So we would respectfully bring this to the attention of the selectmen and ask them to get clarity on it. Again, they may say, thank you for your opinion, building inspector, but we expect you to enforce it. Or we disagree with your opinion, but we don't expect you to enforce it because you don't have the resources. We'll take care of that. Again, there's more than one way to call enforcement, especially if there's disagreement. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Jesse.
Just a general comment, because we've been talking a lot about setting the bar for the person who is being encroached on. I would think, based on my experience at town meeting and living in Southborough, that the majority, and this is just my opinion, my thought on this, majority of the attendees to town meeting will be thinking along the lines of, how is this going to, what is this going to expose me to in terms of liability and vulnerability of being accused of trespass, rather than, oh, this is great because it's going to afford me the opportunity to prevent trespass on me. I just have this instinct, I guess you call it, that more people would be concerned about how this would adversely impact them in terms of the exposure. So we would want to be well prepared for pushback, resistance, sort of, I guess you call it cynicism. Because I understand, I actually support the intent of this bylaw. But I do think it stands a better chance of passing if the bar is set relatively high for the burden of proof for a complainant. Hope that's helpful. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
If I might, I just wanted to share one quick thing with the board before I go. And to back out to 35,000 feet again, and why we're doing this whole thing. In addition to the studies that we reference with regard to the impact of light pollution on dark skies, on environmental impact, wildlife, the American Medical Association links to diabetes, breast cancer, things like that. Last month, there was a rather large study published in a journal related to the American Cancer Society. There were 464,000 participants in the study over 13 years. And they monitored those exposed to light at night, light pollution, and also incidences of thyroid cancer, because thyroid cancer is linked to melatonin levels, which is regulated by light. And the results they got were pretty profound. The top 20% of folks exposed to light at night had a 55% increased risk of thyroid cancer. So it's adding to this wealth of information that we have now of the risks to human health, but also to the detriment of wildlife and the environment, and especially with blue light. So I just want to express my thanks again for the planning board for seeing this through, and for everybody that's helping with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll, as with the other articles, continue them to our next meeting for further input from further results from our work. So the appropriate action tonight at this time would be to entertain a motion to continue this public hearing on outdoor illumination to March 29th at 7:25.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for our annual town meeting warrant article, update section 174-12.1 outdoor illumination, and continue it to March 29th, 2021 at 7:25 p.m.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Very good. We'll see you on the 29th. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for a draft warrant article to create section 174-8.4.1 downtown district. This public hearing is continued from February 22nd. We'll ask the town planner to give us an update on this proposed article.
Okay. Quick little background on what brought us up to this point. I did a little research and just wanted to get a kind of a chronology of events. The planning board started having discussions on this topic back in June of 2020, pretty consistently by carrying a discussion item on the agenda to start understanding the status of the bylaw amendment that was going to be coming down to planning board public hearing phase. So then on October 6, 2020, there was a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, EDC, Planning Board, members of SHOPC, and the Master Plan Committee, and their consultant, Judy Barrett, was also at that meeting. Let me see. Moving forward, there was some more discussion. Then November 10th, as you recall, there was another joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, EDC, and Planning Board, but the consultants were not present. In the interim, we received some draft versions, which then were discussed again at the November 24th joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, EDC, Planning Board. And at that meeting, Judy Barrett, the consultant for the EDC working on this downtown district bylaw, was present. And I believe that was the meeting. It was a lengthy meeting where there were like 7 major topics hashed out and discussed. Then the planning board continued with carrying a discussion agenda item for the downtown initiative bylaw status. Then around at the January 19th, 2021 Board of Selectmen's meeting is where the documents and comments that were provided from Adam Costa, the attorney who you met at the last public hearing, and also Judy Barrett, the current consultant, culminated into a document which was voted to move forward to the planning board's public hearing process. And it was at that Board of Selectmen's meeting that the Board of Selectmen voted to call the district the downtown district and kind of codified that name. So then, let's see here, the Board of Selectmen held a public forum on February 16th to inform the public and get feedback as to what this bylaw was including. Then, sorry, I'm trying to read my chicken scratch. Ultimately, then prior to that, on February 11th, remember the planning board met to review it and possibly revise the draft downtown district. And it was those planning board review comments that I put into the document and provided it back to the Board of Selectmen and the EDC so that they could see the comments and revisions that the planning board were concerned with after that meeting. Let's see, then, as Dawn mentioned, February 22nd, 2021, the planning board opened the public hearing utilizing the draft downtown district bylaw document that had been achieved at that point. And that brings us to this evening. It was public hearing number 2. That's what I got, Don. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Karina. So this is an example of a draft warrant article being proposed by another town committee, which in this case is the EDC, and the selectmen co-sponsoring it. But again, the planning board's role, because it has to do with zoning, the planning board's role is to hold the public hearing. Some of these warrant articles we sponsor and we favor, sometimes unanimously. Sometimes we sponsor warrant articles by others and run the public hearings. and oppose them. So in this case, we've been working with the EDC, the planning board has been working with the EDC and the selectmen to try to improve this revision to the code, and also looking at the proposed design guidelines. And we'll continue to try to support this article moving forward and get it improved to a point where we think that it can be presented at a town meeting and have a chance of succeeding. So I'll open it up to anyone from the EDC or the Board of Selectmen.
We do have a few. Julie Connolly. Oh, Julie, I'm just going to promote you to panelist because it looks like there's a feature that's disabled because I just got a note that you're using an older version of Zoom.
Sorry about that.
Hi, Julie. Welcome back.
Hi, Don. How are you? I don't think I have too much to add. I just want to let you know I'm here, and you know, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them. You know, I think you know, I appreciate Karina's summary, and I know in the last meeting on the 22nd, we did take some time to go through, you know, some of your comments, and we had a follow-up call with the consultant to kind of go through her comments. So I think that we made a lot of progress there as far as the things that I saw as, you know, your comments and discussion points. So I'm hoping we're moving forward, and I'm here if anyone has particular questions.
Go ahead, Marnie.
So I think a resident raised the last planning board meeting the concern around the zoning. So I just wanted to revisit that. I know some diligence needed to be performed around the zoning, but knowing that the map, or at least the one that's on town website in 2006, looks like it cuts property on Lattisquama. And I still am really worried about that, and I would like to understand what the process is to that piece.
That unfortunately we kind of ran out of time when we had our follow-up call last week with the consultant, so we didn't get a chance to address that particular piece. I know that, you know, I certainly don't disagree that that's a weird setup, and I'm not opposed to considering that. What I would consider is amending the map but doing it as a separate bylaw from amending the language of the bylaw itself. Just because I think it's going to get very, you know, muddled, and that could be a separate, you know, I think it's better to keep it separate. But I'm certainly not opposed to changing those, and I would support that.
So, Julie, are you suggesting we change the map first before the bylaw goes into place, or we go forward with the bylaw and then change the map?
I think we would do it. I think we can do it concurrently. I don't see why not. We just haven't really looked into what it takes to change it yet. That's not, you know, that's sort of not really my wheelhouse, but I'm happy to support it, and I don't see why we couldn't be doing both concurrently.
Karina, is it too late to add another article?
I think it is. I can confirm that, but I think it is.
Well, before we add the article, we would have to know what it says. And before we know what it says, we have to find out if people are happy with the current district boundaries or not. And if they're not, what would make them happy? What would work? That's going to take some time.
My concern too is obviously those lots are people's private property, so I certainly wouldn't want to be, although I agree with, you know, looking at that map, it looks weird and there's lots of questions why they do this, what does that mean, what could they do on that property. I certainly wouldn't want to be presumptuous and assume that the property owners who have interest, the title to the property, all want to do that. So, you know, I think there's a lot of steps to getting there where first we need to be talking to those owners and see if that's what they want. And some might want it, some might not. You know, I feel like I need a little bit better understanding of what that means. From what I've looked into it so far, they wouldn't be able to put anything commercial on there. There's really nothing that they could do, but I'm not sure if there are other things that could be done, if it could be split or something. I don't know. And, you know, so I think we need a better understanding of what that division actually means, and, you know, if the property owners are interested in changing the designation.
Dawn, Julie, and board members, I just want to point out that Sarah and I did some homework on the origin of the business district in the downtown area and how it evolved to where it is now. And we have some pretty good documentation. We printed some maps so we could compare as the steps go forward. And Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you can add to this for sure, because you did a lot of the minute research and the maps. Somewhere between 1964 and the 1984 map, you can see a change in the boundary of the BV district, what it is now, and how it aligns itself with the Park Street pathway and the easement of that path within the railroad right-of-way, or within, you know, the easement on the railroad property. And it's easily shown on the maps that we printed out, so maybe it's something, you know, we could confer with you and you can pass on, get some understanding of it so you can go look yourself and see where this happened. Sarah, you have anything to add to that? Anything?
No, other than to say that, you know, the split lots have definitely been in existence for a length of time, you know, at this point. You know, and it's challenging to kind of see that on some of the original maps, you know, 1955 and, you know, even in 62, because they didn't have the individual parcels. So, you know, it does seem though that those lots, you know, did have that kind of division kind of in the middle, or, you know, towards kind of the latter side of Latticequama, you know, that were part of the business village. And Karina is correct. You know, there was a time frame when that line kind of shifted, you know, sort of further out, making more business village area on those lots, but not really sure kind of why that happened. But we did get some really good information, so we'll definitely share it.
Yeah, because sometime in the 1980s, the business district split into business highway and business village district. And in the downtown area, you can see that the boundary of the district did cut through the properties already. It just shifts in alignment. It went from along kind of that Park Street path further into the properties that it's crossing. And we found that there were 7 properties that appear to have the boundary crossed through their parcels. 2 Foley Drive, 25 Park Street, 14, 12, and 10 Latticequama, 5 Park Street, and 35 Boston Road. So again, it looked like they were already being crossed, or, well, I can't say that, because the properties along that Park Street extension there, I call it, that's in the railroad easement, it looks like it ran along there, and then when they changed to BV district, it moved them into the lots more. It moved the boundary into the lots. That's what it looks like to us.
Agreed.
It's certainly very interesting, and I would love to see the background you have on it. But, you know, I think it started, you know, we were focused on the uses and what was permitted, and we just didn't even really think to touch the map, but if we're going to touch the map, maybe we need to look at look at it holistically, because I agree, maybe it makes sense to not have there, but does it make sense to extend the business village district maybe a little bit further down Main Street? I mean, when you think of where it cuts off, when if as a layperson driving through downtown, I think of downtown as like the intersection of 85 and 30 on, I don't know, and I'm not saying that's where my board stands. I was just saying that as a private citizen, if we are going to look at the map, maybe we need to really look at the map and see if there's an appetite for that, or if it makes sense.
It's almost like it opened up those lots. It's almost like it opened up those lots along La Esquama to have some frontage on some future Park Street property, which is the railroad property. You know what I mean? It almost looked like that, like they were giving those lots that opportunity in the future.
Yeah, well, because it goes right along that railroad right of way, right? So I wonder if even the railroad itself, we know that they have they yield some power. Maybe they had some sort of say in it. Maybe they had different plans. Who knows? It's certainly interesting to think.
The only person we didn't talk to is town council, so that may be a resource for you to, maybe he understands or has memory of how that came about.
Yeah.
So Marika is also here, and she has her hand raised.
Yep.
Marika, you're all set.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm not sure if I can weigh in, but maybe just as an EDC coordinator, I'm not sure if I can speak on behalf of the, and I won't. But I heard, some of the concerns that the resident on La Esquama had about the map and part of his property being inside the district. And like Sarah and Karina said, that we didn't change the map of the downtown business village district. So even those residents who bought the properties as they are currently. And I think the EDC had no intentions to touch the footprint of the current commercial business village. We set out to update the zoning as the EDC had discussed with the planning board to allow for mixed use and to update the uses that were currently in there. So that's what we've been doing. So for the residents on La Esquama, I just wanted to say is that those split lots, if the zoning changes through this bylaw, nothing changes for them. I mean, no one is going to come in and do anything commercial on their lot. I mean, it's their property. They can stay there. They can live there. They can build a new house there. I mean, that's still all allowed. And if I understood correctly from the planning consultants, you can't even if they would sell it to someone, you can't build something there because the majority of their lot is in a residential zone, and you would need access to a public road. So those back sides, those little areas of their lot are not joining any public road, so no one would even be allowed to build anything commercial there. So, and I think the whole discussion about the, changing the boundaries of the downtown business village district is a whole new project. And like Julie said, then we should look at it, not looking just at these split lots on La Esquama, but then we should really figure out what do we want to have within our downtown, and would that include our community buildings, some schools. To add. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Marika, for that. I think the concern from the resident of La Esquama was, in the same respect, Marika, as if someone, say the neighbor, sold off the section of land to an abutter that actually was developing something bigger, and then there could be, some mixed use closer to his property, and he'd lose his buffer. There's a lot of things that could happen. Just if we're going to do this, we should do it right, so we're protecting the residential neighbors at the same time. So I hear what you're saying, that, yeah, if everything stays the same, yeah, no one could build like you're saying. But we have people coming in all the time, changing lot lines, giving pieces of land to someone else. Another property is getting expanded because they got some other land. And then all of a sudden they have a bigger lot and they can do more. So I think that seemed to be Mr. Miller's concern, what I picked up from his voicing his concern about it. And I think if we are going to make changes to the overall zoning, to what can happen in that district, it should be done correctly so that a neighbor or a resident doesn't have to worry about a massive or a much bigger commercial building coming closer to him if the neighbor decides to sell a piece of his property.
Can I respond?
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, sorry. So yes, I'm a bit confused. I'm not sure if I understand you correctly, but how is it different from what is there right now? How would that change? I mean, currently, people can sell off part of that lot. I mean, it's within the downtown business village district. Through our new proposed downtown district, we're not allowing bigger buildings or more density. Everything still, I mean, that still has to go through a special permit, and if not, it still has to, adhere to all these performance standards. So I'm not sure how that would be different than the current situation. I mean, right now, his lot, majority lot, is still residential, and it will be still residential. It's not going to change. We're not changing his lot use or area.
So Marika, my whole understanding is we're trying to encourage the whole point of this from the EDC and the selectmen is to encourage development down in the downtown, correct?
We are updating the zoning. So we are allowing by right uses. So only the uses that we as a town would want to encourage having in downtown, which includes retail, office space, very small scale. I mean, you can read it, whatever is by right. And even if you come in and you want to open a shop, you can't just build any kind of new structure that you want. You'd still have to, your use is by right, so you wouldn't need a special permit to operate a retail use. You would still need to adhere to all the development standards that are outlined, which
But Marika, the whole point of this,
maximum height, setbacks, etc., parking requirements. And if you want to build bigger or you want to do a brewery, you need a special permit from the planning board. So we're not allowing, we are just trying to make it clear to developers what we want in a downtown and make that process easier for them.
right, but I think from what I heard from early meetings and everything is part of this was to encourage developers to come in and to make it less restrictive so that they would come in and know that they could just build XYZ, whatever got approved in the by right piece, right? If we're doing that, and if I was an abutter, I would be concerned that, okay, maybe it would be attractive. And I think Julie even mentioned it before, that with when development starts happening, sometimes neighbors like, well, I don't want to go through that. And then they sell their house and then it gets gobbled up in part of a development. I recall Julie saying that in one of our prior meetings. So I think that sometimes happens. So I think that's what Mr. Miller was voicing as a concern in terms of the lot lines and what is a business.
But I think you need to read, sorry.
What the business village line is and what the residential is. And if we're gonna, make it less restrictive in terms of opening it up so developers can do more by right, If I was in a butter, I would have that same concern.
So,
But that's only the
so,
use, not the building. That's by right.
if-
And
if
right
you-
now, there,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead, Marika.
Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, it's only the use that is by right. It's not the building. You can't just go put up a building. And because the houses on, because those lots are majority residential, the property still has to be residential. Plus there's no frontage there. So their commercial space couldn't be used as anything because there's no road frontage, and you couldn't change the existing residential space to commercial space.
So example, right? So that the area that abuts the old Ted's Towing, J&J Auto, all the residential properties that abut that and are part of that, okay? Prime example, right? There's a piece, there's some of the residential houses abut that property, correct? And are in the business village. I see Mimi saying yes, right?
So
People, if that property got sold and neighbors who directly abut it, like, oh, give me a little money, you could get a bigger lot all of a sudden, gives you a little more availability to do more with that space. And then the neighbors who are residential and might have a little sliver too that are in that zone, all of a sudden, the quote, what they thought they had for a buffer before is gone.
I
Right?
don't know, sorry, those properties on La Esquama are always in the residential, Res A. They're not in the downtown business village district. They're not in the downtown district. So whoever sells their house on La Esquama cannot build an office building there.
I'm not saying they're going to sell the entire property on La Esquama. They'd only sell off the chunk that is actually in the business village.
It's a tiny, how much space is that? You can build, you can't even have a coffee cart on that space.
I guess I'm not doing a good job of explaining it.
No, I understand what you mean, but people they do not buy that house, their lot on La Esquama, thinking, oh, this is where my house is. And at the back of my lot is a tiny little piece of land that falls within the downtown business village district. And that's my buffer. That's not how it works. Whoever comes in and builds something behind their lot has to keep a distance from them. I mean, that's, again, it's in the development standards. No one can build up to their house, right? So I don't understand, and I don't understand how it's all of a sudden how this would be different under the new downtown district bylaw. And again, like Julie said, we are not allowing everything by right. We just, and I think the Board of Selectmen chair invited people to say, look, we've listed 8 by right uses, not buildings, by right uses, because that shows investors, developers, that these are the uses that we think are beneficial for a downtown. I mean,
Sarah, can you bring up the map?
Sorry?
I'm asking Sarah.
Yes,
Andrew, if I could just tune in here. Earlier in this, Sarah and Karina said that they had map information, which I think the board would want sent on to the EDC for their look at. I think we heard Julie say that we should revise the zoning within the current bounds or take a parallel track, revise the zoning and revise the boundaries, or revise the boundaries as a second step, either a parallel step or a separate step. This is the EDC bylaw. This is their proposal. What I would suggest is that we send that information off to the EDC and let them decide which way they want to go. If they want to move ahead with the draft that we have right now, and leave the boundaries alone, that's their decision, then that's the direction that this public hearing can take and lead us to a point at the town meeting. Or make changes or whatever. But I think we're at a point where that decision has to be made after, it can be an informed decision after looking at the boundaries from the previous maps. I think another important step is, we're sitting here, we're talking very much so about the neighbors, and we haven't heard from the neighbors other than one. So I think that's an important step, is to understand the concerns of the neighbors, if any. If they're comfortable with the way Marika is describing the changes, if they're comfortable with that, then that would help us, all of us, and the public who are going to vote on this, that the neighbors are all in favor of it. Or if they're not in favor of it, then we should be knowledgeable of that and be guided by it, and then judge whether or not we want to go ahead with changes. At this time, the changes may be acceptable, but maybe not until the map is revised. We have to know what the neighbors want to do, because if this is opposed by the neighbors, then I think it would be at great risk at the town meeting. So let me ask this, if I can. Are there anyone else out there at tonight's meeting who would like to speak in opposition to what we have right now?
We have a hand up, Don, in the attendee list.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very appreciative of some of the comments of planning board members, particularly Mr. Mills, who makes my case quite eloquently. And I'm not sure I really need to add much, except that I think the EDC has their agenda, and that's to lay out the uses they'd like to see made in the downtown. But it's up to the planning board, finally, to plan and to set the terms of the zoning. And, as is pointed out, in the EDC committee meeting on February 25th, the committee made their intentions and their beliefs quite clear. And I'm hoping that somebody from the planning board was present on that call or has reviewed the recording of it. And I hope that citizens on this call will, if they did not see the Economic Development Committee February 25th meeting, they will look it up on YouTube and watch very closely, because it's all made quite plain. Mr. Anderson, Robert Anderson, a member of the committee, says, quote, theoretically, this is concerning folks who have fragments of their property included in the district, that theoretically they could do a lot split and sell that commercially zoned property to the abutter and kind of make some money off the sale of the back of their property and keep the residential on the front side. That's as plain as it could be. And when pressed about the point on the district, Mr. Anderson went on to say that to rewrite the map, and that was one of the options that was offered to them at the outset. And Ms. Connolly indicated that Judy Barrett pushed us, quote, in the direction of just renaming the district rather than redrawing the map when the opportunity was there right at the beginning. But why was that not done? Because it was the easiest way out, and they could concentrate on their uses question and the by right issue and not deal with the map, because that was felt to be opening up a can of worms. And that was the commentary on that call, that everybody was worried about, literally, quote, opening a can of worms. Well, the problem is you can't admit that you've got people that can sell portions of their parcel, a much larger consolidated parcel. For the record, on that call, it was indicated that there were only 3 parcels concerned. There are actually 7. just to the south of Main Street. Number 5 Park, 10, 12, 14 Lattisquama, 25 Park, 2 Foley Drive, a full quarter of a mile from the main street that is supposed to be being improved, and 35 Boston Road. When you take the parcels just to the west of the CSX tracks, we're talking about 10, 12, 14 Lattisquama, 25 Park, 4 Park Street, and the CSX owned property of 1 acre. And consolidate all those contiguous parcels, you're up to a solid 4 acres of developable land. And if you don't think that developers are salivating over that prospect, you know, I mean, I don't think anybody's crazy enough on this call to believe that. It's very, very clear. And, you know, the EDC's position, and, you know, the EDC, staff are made up of some very highly qualified, competent, experienced, all real estate professionals and development professionals and attorneys, really smart people. They're worried about, as Mr. Anderson warned his fellow committee members, that to write an article changing the map would, quote, just remove some potential, some future potential. Well, what is that potential? That potential is those 4 acres. Now, what I'm asking for from the town, from the Board of Selectmen, from the Economic Development Committee, and I feel like I'm getting it from the Planning Board because I'm hearing a lot of common sense among you folks, is just what is the goal of this downtown project? Is it in fact to revitalize Main Street, which, as I've indicated, I support? You know, I'd like an ice cream shop downtown, and I'd like to see some improvements at the corner of Newton Street and Boston Road and Main Street. Is that in fact the goal, or is it to potentially open up a parcel that would extend, again, a quarter of a mile south of Main Street all the way to the cusp of Foley Drive? And that may not be the intention, but it is certainly the possibility. And the members of the EDC themselves admitted as much. And so it's up to the Planning Board. And again, I applaud you folks for listening and getting it. Stomp on the brakes, because you're, as the EDC made clear again in their call, it's the Planning Board that's going to be left holding the bag at the end of this. And you know, unfortunately, I understand that a lot of people have a lot of time and energy and effort invested in this, and I am very appreciative, in fact, of what's been done. But to talk for even a split second about by right zoning when you don't have the map straight, you guys know how ridiculous that is. You can't say, well, we'll take care of the map later. You know, for quite a while in this process, I've been getting the line, well, the map is the map. It's a little wonky, but we don't really know. You know, and it's nice to have somebody look into the origins of the map. But you got to get the map straight first, or there's no reason to support this. It's just a ridiculous thing. And even the EDC people, the very highly trained and experienced development professionals on the EDC, know damn well what could possibly happen.
Thank you. We can come back to you if you'd like. Is there anyone else out there that would like to speak against what we are proposing at this time?
I do not see any additional hands raised.
Is there anyone out there who would like to speak in favor of what is being proposed at this time?
Oh, it looks like Andrew. You also?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Did you want to speak in favor of what's being proposed?
Well, here's what I just wanted to say. You know, I've been following this closely because I'm in favor of something that can help bring some new energy to the downtown. And I just want to make a general observation. I don't think everyone is really all that far apart on what the overall goal of this initiative is, and I think it's the discussion that's happening here is understandable, good, healthy. So the only comment that I have is just expressing hope and optimism that this issue can be resolved to everyone's satisfaction, so that this proposal that I know that Julie and the Board of Selectmen and the EDC and everyone has put a lot of time and energy into can ultimately come to fruition. That's my only comment, is just to encourage consensus and positive movement on this. I mean, I have some ideas that as I'm just thinking, as I'm sitting here, about how this could be resolved, but I they deserve kind of careful thought,
Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Don, can I just respond to some of Mr. Miller's concerns?
You can try. He seems to be. Sure, go ahead.
Sure. I just want to clarify one. I don't believe that it's possible under the proposed bylaw for a 4-acre parcel with contiguous slices of these split level lots to put something, to patch that together and put something in there. The only thing we're changing as far as what doesn't need a special permit from the planning board are certain specific uses, with the point being to encourage those uses. This is not, as everybody on this call knows, changing the zoning bylaw downtown is not new. This is something that's been looked at again and again over the years. This is something that was recommended for 13 years, or at least now. It was recommended in the 2008 master plan. It's been recommended in the housing recommendations. It was recommended in the Shopsy report. These are making these zoning changes is what has been consistently recommended. This is the first time, at least that I've heard, somebody asking to change the map. I don't think it's wrong to change the map, but I don't think that the proposal that is on the table right now increases the risk for those property owners any more than maybe what already exists. And I think that's slim to none. Again, I'm personally not opposed to changing those. I have zero interest in keeping those split lots, split. I agree, it's silly, but I also think that that's a whole new level of work to engage those property owners. We've been working on this for years, and before that, other groups worked on this for years. And I think we're all working towards the same goal of bringing something forward at the Maytown meeting. And I don't think that it increases the risk of those property owners any more than it is now to change to these specific by right uses, because it still doesn't, it doesn't change the fact that a proponent would have to come forward with a proposal for a building, all those other things, and I just can't imagine how that could happen.
Julie, can I just interject something, because it might add some clarity here, Dawn, if I may.
Of course.
Okay. First thing, I just want to point out that if the proposed bylaw amendment moves forward at town meeting, it does require a zoning map change, because the zoning district that's outlined name is going to change. Therefore, the map has to be updated to reflect that change. Okay, bottom line, the minimum that has to be done is that, and that has to be included in the warrant article to make that happen. Secondly, I failed to mention in my chronology when we first started speaking that on March 3rd, we had a working session with representatives from the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the Planning Department. Marika, the EDC coordinator, facilitated the meeting. And that meeting culminated in some questions regarding the threshold for special permit at 3,000 square feet per establishment. Okay, so versus the 2,000 square foot.
Karina, that wasn't discussed at that meeting. There was a question about that after, but that was not discussed.
That's what I'm saying. It culminated from that meeting was a question, right? I said culminated from that meeting, okay? So that came out of that meeting. So there's a concern about that as well. So there is kind of, it appears to me that there is a change in expanding what can be by right there as opposed to what there is now, right? Because right now it's 2,000 square feet. You need a special permit in the BV district for anything over 2,000 square feet, right? And the way the new proposed bylaw is currently written, I believe it indicates that you don't need a special permit from the planning board unless you hit 3,000 square feet or more per establishment. So you're comparing square feet to square feet per establishment. So there's
That's specific to the use though, not the building, right? You still need to, like, for a use within a premises, within a building, if you want to have one of the by right uses over 3,000 square feet, then you would still need the special permit. The by right is limited.
right, but 3,000 square feet of use still needs 3,000 square feet of space, right? You can't say, oh, a use only needs, 3,000 square foot use doesn't need 3,000 square feet of space. Every use requires that amount of space. So I'm just making that clear, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. I just didn't want there to be confusion in that. That is a question still.
But a proponent, so say if you wanted, if you wanted a use that was, with under that 3,000 square foot threshold, and it was by right use, you still need to go through the application. You still need to go through, you still need to get site plan review. You still need to get a building permit. You still need to meet all of the other, rules and regulations and qualifiers. It's just that you don't have to go get a special permit for that use.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that point because I failed to mention it earlier. That's all.
Todd, can I say one other thing?
Absolutely, Andrew.
Hey, and Julia, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I think it was within the last 2 years, we actually had a couple of different plans come to us about that property on Foley to get developed. So I think that's what Mr. Miller, I don't want to speak for him, but he might be referencing that in terms of what possibilities could be for someone who wants to parcel together a whole bunch of extra pieces of land and what could be done, because it's very possible something could go in quickly back there because there has already been plans brought before us for a couple of different ideas back there. So, I mean, and I don't know what the possibility is. I'm just saying, I think that's why there's sensitivity to that area specifically.
So it's starting to get late, and what I would recommend, and I don't want to cut this off, but I'd like to throw this out as the next steps. Have us send those maps, the research that Karina and Sarah did, to the EDC so that you can make an informed decision. And the decision would be, do you want to do you want to change any of the boundaries of the district, downtown district, at this time, at this town meeting? Do you want to do that? And tell the planning board and the public that you do, and this is how we want to do it. or that you don't at this time, and that you want the article to move forward in its present condition, or it's in its present condition relative to the boundary issue, and see if the article will prevail, knowing that there's concern, certainly by one of the neighbors, and I think you've heard some concerning words from at least one of the planning board members relative to that. So you come back to us between now and hopefully March 29th, if we are able to continue this public hearing. And before that, tell us what you want to do and how you want to do it. The easiest thing, I guess, would be to say, don't spend any more time on the boundaries. We'll try to move this forward with the boundaries as they are. And then we won't spend any more time on it. And if the neighbors have questions about it and concerns, they can be addressed by, if there are particular zoning questions, the board will try to answer them. And if they're relative to the downtown district specifics, then we would rely on the EDC to respond and to see where that takes us. But I would suggest that we get that direction from you as far as moving ahead, and have a little bit more, and take it up again on the 29th. Mrs. Luttrell.
I just wanted to bring something else up that people have been asking me about. And I just want to say zoning is hard. And, the hearing process is to hopefully air people's concerns. So when we go to town meeting, we have most of the questions answered. But even still, things come up at town meeting. I've been getting a lot of questions about the septic and whether that, I know there was going to be a feasibility study, whether that's moving forward. I know the ULI report said that the primary barrier to the revitalization of the downtown was the septic. And I thought that the chair of the Board of Selectmen said that was going to be moving forward in a parallel process. And also, one of the questions was raised, if you were going to do a small package system downtown, you'd need to get easements from CSX to cross over the tracks. And we know how that's been going with the sidewalks. So that's another question that's going to come up. Thanks.
Thank you, Mimi. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's sort of the other half of this. That was the other second of the two main concerns from the ULI report. I don't know if Marika is still on and she has more detailed information, but I know we did put an RFP out. I know we got some hits on it, and I believe the Board of Selectmen was going to approve a contract, but Marika might have more information on that. But we are moving forward on that for sure. We talked about, so that would allow us to do a feasibility study to see what the different options are. The EDC's gone out. We've actually visited with other towns. Fortunately, we're not the only, or unfortunately, we're not the only New England town that sort of dealt with this problem where we were, had an existing downtown center before we, were really dealing with those indoor plumbing type issues. So, we're sort of trying to go back and put in infrastructure underneath, things that are already existing. So, but there are ways to do it, and we've looked at how other communities have dealt with this, and I think a feasibility study is definitely the next step to see what the options are. And obviously, like everything downtown, we may have to unfortunately deal with CSX, but we'll see when we get there. We've even talked about, as a possibility, that parcel that is owned by National Grid behind the pizza place, maybe that's a place where we could put some sort of system. So, again, we don't own that yet, but we're looking at avenues of being able to access that. So, we're certainly working on that, and I appreciate your bringing that up. And Donnie, as far as the talking DDC, I'm happy to do that. We did discuss it a little bit last time, and again, from without speaking for them, but we did speak about it last time a bit. We came to this because we wanted to change the use, and we came to the planning board and we asked if we could change the zoning bylaw, and the direction we got from Mr. Morris was, why don't you take a crack at it and bring us something? So that's what we did. So we worked, we hired Judy, we used our grant money, we hired Adam, we worked with the Board of Selectmen, and we brought you a draft to take a look at. So that's where we are, and we really hope that you'll support it. The map, like I said, personally, I think that makes sense. However, I don't think that it's really within the EDC's purview to change the zoning map or to bring something out to change the zoning map. I think that's a zoning issue I would think would be in planning board's purview. So if you want to bring that forward, I would support it, and I would weigh in if you wanted my opinion on different matters or EDCs, but I just don't really see that as an EDC issue to change the zoning map. But again, I'm happy to bring it to the board and discuss it with them. And I'm also more than happy to look at whatever information Karina and Sarah have been able to dig up. I appreciate their diligence there.
Thank you. I just feel that from more than a few years of experience at town meeting, when things like this are proposed, there's going to be people that are going to say, they may say, yeah, I like these changes. I like what's being proposed, but I'm not going to vote for it until I know where it applies. And where it applies is the zoning district boundaries. And if you say, leave them alone, then we'll tell the people, these are the new rules that are being proposed, and this is where they're going to be applied. And if people have a problem with that, then they're not going to support it. And then there's the flip side, which is people that might say, well, how can I approve a district boundary until I know what the rules are? And so we don't know which one would come first or if they have to go together. And again, this is an art and a science at the town meeting where, it only takes a few questions and a couple of answers that are inadequate or not provided, or the answer is we don't know, or the answer is incomplete, that could kill an article. We've all seen that happen. So there's risk with it, with bringing any of these articles forward. We know that. We've got 2 out of the 4 being proposed by the planning board. And we know that there's a risk of somebody asking or finding sections of it, words within it that pose a risk that we didn't see or that we can't adequately explain to give the people a comfort level that everything's going to be okay. But again, that's the EDC's decision as to how you want to move forward. And again, the planning board will continue to move the article forward and try to improve on it, anticipating the type of concerns that we heard from Mr. Miller and may be hearing from others, and the type of support we may be hearing from others. So if there's, I guess I'll open it up one more time, but I'd like to suggest that we send that research information off to you and then wait for your guidance as to how to proceed at the next hearing. Anyone else? Questions, comments, public?
Mr. Miller has his hand raised again.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I would just, very interesting comments and some quite sensible ones. I would just, again, encourage everybody to review the words of the EDC themselves because they were quite clear. And, you cannot advance by right zoning until you define the limits of where that zoning is going to apply geographically. And right now, this looks like an undisclosed land grab. The one thing I would ask of all parties, the EDC and the BOS, is that they be absolutely forthcoming about what their intentions are, because again, according to very well qualified members of the EDC, the possibility of cobbling together these parcels that I've referred to the west of the tracks and to the south of Main Street is eminently possible. And if those parcels were to be gathered together, if CSX and their $10.5 billion in annual revenues were to come calling, they've already owned 1 acre, and were they to put together the rest, it would be off to the races with development. If that's what the town intends, they should disclose it. If it isn't what's intended, then the map should be limited to the Main Street area, and it can be sold to voters as revitalization of Main Street, which is, I think, what most people expect and believe in and would support, including myself. Thanks for your time again.
Thank you. Anyone else?
John, I just want to point out, we do have one more agenda item with the gentleman that's been waiting there, just to let you know.
You mean an agenda item for the rest of the planning board meeting tonight?
Yes, we have a discussion item on 78 Turnpike Road.
Right, yeah, that's,
Okay, just reminding you.
yeah, we're gonna still have a ways to go tonight, so.
Okay.
If there's no more questions or comments tonight, then we'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing to March 29th at 7:30.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing for annual town meeting warrant article, create section 174-8.4.1 downtown district, that we continue that to March 29th, 2021 at 7:30 PM.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Morris, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Okay, we'll see you on the 29th. And thank you for participating tonight. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item. 78 Turnpike Road, Lab Corporation Patient Services Center at Walgreens. Karina, this one's interesting.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to give Mr. Thoreau some hope that he was still going to be heard, because he's been on here for the duration. Okay. I'm just going to briefly say that LabCorp approached the building department with the proposal to put a small area within the Walgreens at 78 Turnpike Road. In correspond, and I'll let Mr. Thoreau explain exactly what they do there and what's gonna happen. But the building commissioner and I discussed this at length, and I reviewed the parking that is there and what was proposed, and it's essentially would be a wash. The other thing is, and more importantly, is that the building commissioner had said that the proposed change to this LabCorp patient, not patient, but a facility, he'll explain, is an accessory use to the principal use of the Walgreens pharmacy that exists in that building. So Sarah, if you'd like to update Tim Thoreau as a panelist, then he can speak to his proposal.
Yes. He should be coming through.
He has his hand up.
I'm just gonna allow, I keep trying to promote him to panelist. I'm not really sure why that's
Why it's not
not working.
In the meantime, I can tell you that,
Can you hear me yet?
there he is.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, LabCorp's seeking to approval to open a patient service center at the Walgreens at 78 Turnpike Road. We're anticipating seeing about 30 patients a day, both adult and pediatric. Of course, it's going to take a while to ramp up to those numbers, but our initial hours of operation would be 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. with a lunch break scheduled from 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. In this new model for us, we're doing it nationwide. It's basically to supplement our traditional patient service centers, the closest of which are in Framingham, Massachusetts. That's the closest facility to Southborough. So I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have about LabCorp and what we do.
I'll open up to the board then. Mr. Mills.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for coming. I'm curious, is this going to be a typical draw center? And is there going to be a limit on what would actually be brought into this location? Like, you anticipate like fecal matter coming through the door or anything like that? I used to work for a diagnostics company, so I saw everything that actually came through the door at the lab. And I'm just wondering what people could be bringing into the Walgreens and walking through and handing off.
No, I understand, but I mean, they could be dropping off patient samples. Yes, that is a possibility. We do provide containers for that to our customers. So they should be provided with some kind of specimen collection container, as well as the biohazard bag to put that in to make it safe for transport. But that conceivably could happen. But majority of our collections are mostly blood and urine that are collected at the site.
Are you anticipating pain management clients through here too?
Not a high volume.
Okay.
It's basically it's clinical specimens for the most part.
Thank you.
Mr. Stein.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually got my flu shot months and months ago in the exact room, I think, that because you currently are using that room, right? Unless I'm
No, that's going to be new space for us.
It's new. Okay, because in the section of the store in the same area, I believe, aren't you guys already doing flu shots and stuff in that area?
Walgreens probably is, but this will be we'll be opening up a LabCorp dedicated facility within the Walgreens.
So the change to the building is just it's a slight expansion, is it not?
Well,
you're basically using the existing space.
Yeah, it's repurposing of space. I think what they're doing is probably from the other ones that I've seen is basically taking over a portion of their stock room.
Okay. Are you going to be changing the building in any way?
Not the exterior, no.
So
there will be some limited signage changes, of course, but that would have to go for approval as well, I'm sure.
Okay. So this is in front of the planning board, Don, because what? Because it's a change to a previously approved site plan and special permit, or why are we talking about this?
I can answer that for you, Jesse, if you want me to, Don.
I want you to.
Okay.
Even though the board should know that you and I talked about this.
Yes, Don and I did talk about this, and this is essentially, I recommended that LabCorp attend the planning board meeting for discussion for transparency with the planning board and the public. And it was my opinion that it would seem that based on the building commissioners and my consensus that it was an accessory use and that the parking is not impacted, that we just wanted the planning board members to be aware that this would be taking place, and if you had questions or any other concerns.
So we have no jurisdiction over this?
Well, if we determine that a site plan is required, let's say Mr. Thoreau said there'd be 300 cars, 300 more cars there a day. That would definitely trigger a site plan to see if the parking, there was adequate parking and there was safe in and out of the site. But after what they submitted and a review by the town planner and the building inspector and the approved site plan, as Karina said at the beginning, it does not appear to have any increase that would trigger site plan. But we didn't want to just have the town planner and the building inspector to tell LabCorp, yeah, you're good to go. We wanted the board to tune in on this, and if the board feels it triggers site plan, then that's what we would tell them. Go ahead.
So on what basis are you satisfied that this does not cause an increase in the traffic and the need for parking and such? Has any study been done?
Don, can I say something?
Sure.
So Jesse, think of it this way, right? You go to the doctor online and you say, hey, I'm not feeling so well in it or whatnot, right? They say, oh, you need to draw some blood here. I want you to go to LabCorp. You go, oh, where's the nearest place I can go for LabCorp? You look on a map and it says, oh, there's a LabCorp right in Walgreens. You go to Walgreens, you say, hey, this is what my doctor said he wants the test, the panel I need run. They go, they draw your blood. Maybe you give a urine specimen or whatever. And then you turn around and you walk out. That's basically
right.
it.
So that sounds to me
30 patients a day is what
that sounds to me like there would be more people coming to the building than there are now.
So Jesse, the other thing is it's also they're competing against other locations. There's a draw center on where I know I've had tests done further across from Wendy's. They have it in the medical center on Newton Street. So it's really a convenience thing. And when I used to work for a diagnostics company, these would get popped up and they test them out, see if they were productive or not. Remember, they're going to have people manning them to make appointments, do the draws, make the specimen collection and everything. So, it's not a very big space. When I worked at other places or went to other locations, like in downtown Boston, you could have up to probably 12 phlebotomists. Like in Worcester, you'd see that. Based on the size of this location, I mean, is it Tim? Can you?
Yeah. This is a max 2-person patient service center.
Yeah.
So, and for sake of argument, it's usually 30 patients per day per phlebotomist. And then after that, if we started to go above that number, we would probably seek to open someplace else within the town. Usually our strongest performing patient service centers are in a medical building with anchor business. So this is more, patient convenience, trying to draw upon some, mutual, I'm losing the term I'm looking for here right now. Symbiotic type relationship between Walgreens and LabCorp. So, we don't anticipate getting any more than 30 to 40 a day, honestly.
And Jesse, if I may interrupt, John, I can quantify that for you on what I reviewed very quickly here. If the LabCorp use would fall under medical office at 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area. My quick calc for the parking is 400 square feet. Medical would require 1.4 spaces. However, the retail use reduction from the 10,865 square feet to 10,465 square feet, because I'm taking the 400 square feet of retail out, would eliminate 2 spaces. So we're getting rid of need of, based on those calculations, you're reducing the need for 2 spaces and adding for 1.4, which is 2 spaces. So that's why I indicated that it was a wash when it came to parking.
Okay, no further questions, thanks.
I'm glad you asked that question, Jesse. You got stepped all over, but you got a very long, very thorough answer, and I feel as though it was adequate. Anyone, Mrs. Luttrell?
Yes, thank you. So Karina, you're saying there are 2 different uses, a medical use and a retail use?
It's an accessory use. So the medical use is accessory to the pharmacy, which is considered retail, I would think.
Okay. So my question is this, the special permit approval was for retail pharmacy. Any future change in use will require an amendment to the special permit. So you're saying this isn't a change?
It's not a change in use. It's in discussions with the building commissioner, she opined it was an accessory use. I think, Don, you had an example of that when we were talking.
Yeah, I mean, when Walgreens, when we did the site plan here, could be wrong, but one example might be, at that time, the pharmacies, they dispensed pills and medicine, but they didn't give shots. And now you can go to CVS, Walgreens, you can go anywhere and get your flu shot for free. So there's a big difference between a clerk selling Band-Aids and candy bars and a person injecting you with something. And now those shots, those injections are considered part of the operation of a pharmacy. And now it seems to be always expanding, so that you don't have to, a long time ago, you had to go to the hospital to have your blood checked. And now it's more out into these smaller. So I agree with what the building inspector ruled, that this is an evolving, use of a pharmacy. I mean, I hope I'm not still on the planning board when they start doing, surgery at Walgreens.
You're never leaving the planning board.
But I'm not sure if that it just seems to be like the gas stations, for example. A gas station used to be a gas station with maybe a Coke machine and a candy machine. And now you go to Cumberland Farms and like the least thing you get is gasoline. They're called gas stations, but they're supermarkets. 2 completely uses. But over time, they've evolved into what we have now.
Another example is the CVS with the mini clinics. How that's
Say that again, Tim. We can't hear you.
Another example would be like CVS with their minute clinics. Do you have those up in Massachusetts? I know those are big in Connecticut.
Not yet. I don't know of a CVS with a minute clinic. Would that have a doctor in it?
Usually a nurse. Yeah.
We do have those in Massachusetts.
Yes, we do.
We all set, Mrs. Luttrell?
Yes, thank you.
Mrs. Houlihan.
Okay, so not to belabor any points here, I have 2 specific questions. So the first is injecting with a like a flu shot is different than collecting blood draw samples and having medical waste. So is this something that, that's my only worry about the change in use, is that you actually are generating a different type of medical waste, and does that change the use requirement? My guess is Board of Health would be required to be involved anyway.
If I could interject on that, it kind of is similar in medical waste, because you still have a sharps that you need to dispose of.
You just now have body fluids, which you weren't collecting prior?
Very little, because most of it goes out for testing.
Okay, that's just an open question. So I guess if the building inspector has ruled it an accessory use, I'm fine with that. My only concern is just as a customer of Walgreens and not going at peak times, getting out the traffic and making a left-hand turn onto Oak Hill is really challenging sometimes. So my worry is just, I've been to LabCorp. It is my preferred diagnostic lab. So if I go there, they often schedule appointments on the increments of half hours. So sometimes I don't know, what the incremental time slots are. You're suggesting 30 customers with 1 up to 2 max over a course of 8 hours. So you're going to have, multiple cars in and out. So I'm just curious about the impact on Oak Hill and what that traffic pattern, how that will handle that.
Is that a question for me or for the board? I'm sorry.
No, I think that's for Dawn. I don't know. I mean,
Well, I think Karina and I talked about that a little bit and we thought about it, but if you go there at certain times of the year or times of the day, like Valentine's time, parking lot's always full of guys like myself who wait till the last minute, or at Christmas time, or it just seems like 30 cars having the building inspector take a look at that. We're not traffic people, but I mean there's just thousands and thousands of cars on Route 9 all day long, and
you're basically talking like 3 to 3.5 per hour. Right, Don? If there's 30 appointments in 8 hours.
Yeah, and I guess the way they spread them out, they intentionally spread them out as opposed to everybody show up at 2 o'clock.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we do our best. There usually is, like the morning rush, but after that, it tends to taper down.
my issues are addressed. I have no more worries. Thanks. Thanks for hanging in there, Tim. It's been a long night.
I'd like to just follow up my experience with building clinics and hospitals and dealing with changing uses and needs and equipment technologies. So Tim, you said that the people will give blood and the vast majority of that amount of blood that's taken from each person is containerized and removed from the site.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's usually sent down for testing, but anything else, is put in the appropriate container. So there's no risk to the outside. Anything that's Sharp's container is put in a hard rigid container for transport. Anything else that's soft is just put in red biohazard bags and then boxed up and sent out that way.
Well, I'm certainly no medical person at all, but I have been in labs within clinics and hospitals where they will analyze the blood and then pour it down the drain or other body fluids and pour it down the drain. Is that going to be happening within this building, or is the down the drain stuff somewhere else?
Maybe urine, but not the specimens, not the blood.
And I think was asked earlier, have you got the green light from the Southborough Board of Health?
That's a different process.
Understand, and it's a different jurisdiction, but where are you with that?
That is something that's handled. I think they don't need approval until after the fact. So we let them know that we are opening up a new patient service center, and they inspect when they have the opportunity.
Well, what if they say they don't like it and you've got it all opened up? It sounds to me like you need to get something from the Board of Health that says you can do this.
I think because we're a known entity.
It's beyond our jurisdiction, but I guess we'll ask the town planner to cross-check with the Board of Health. All paths, all roads lead through the planning office.
Okay.
And I think the planning board would need a follow-up on that to give us a comfort level that
Yeah.
what
I handle more, I'm more on the real estate side. The phlebotomy group operations team handles the licensing.
Well, you're not going to get anything unless the planning board either asks you to come in for site plan, or we say you're good to go.
Okay.
So, in
So
the process of doing that, either one or the other, hopefully tonight, determining that, we would ask you as the real estate guy to talk to your medical people to commit to assuring the town planner that the Board of Health has given you the green light.
Okay.
But
Right.
whether now or when in the near future.
Okay, I can do that. I'll follow up and I'll get back. Who should I get back to, Sarah?
Well, Karina will decide who you get back to, but I just want to ask the board, are we all set with saying that there's no further action with the planning board, especially relative to site plan or revision to the special permit?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm not going to stand in the way either. So I guess I'm abstaining.
Mimi?
I think I'm okay.
Thank you. Marnie?
I'm okay with it.
So Tim, that means you have to give Mrs. Houlihan, a free ticket to your next LabCorp because she gave you a commercial.
Okay. If she really wants to get her blood drawn.
That's an
Okay.
ethics violation, Mr. Morris.
So Karina, you have some form of written correspondence between us and Tim,
Yes,
emails.
yes.
So would it be appropriate for you to, in whatever email string you may have, to confirm tonight's meeting and send an email to him confirming that the planning board determined that they're not required to do any more applications or approvals from the board for this proposed use?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you would need, right, Tim? Something in writing?
Correct.
Okay with the board? Okay with you, Karina?
Yes, and in return, I would also get a something back from Tim or LabCorp indicating that they're following proper Board of Health protocol.
Okay,
Yes.
We'll do.
Anything else from anyone else? Thanks for hanging in there, Tim.
All right, thank you.
Good luck. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a discussion, other business properly before the board. We heard a little bit of the planners report, or did we hear the whole planners report?
I think you heard everything that's critical. We did get Tree City USA 2020, thanks to Sarah, who submitted the application, and we were approved by the DCR. We're still waiting to hear from the Arbor Foundation, but DCR said that's not a question. Usually it comes through.
So would this be year two? All right. That's it on the planners report. We already took care of the meeting minutes. The next
Yeah.
meeting is March 29th. Is there anything else from anyone else other than to apologize to Kate for?
Is it 9:47 already?
Jesus, bad. Sorry, everybody. It's on me.
I just want to say, Don, originally you drove a lot with that Tree City USA, so congratulations. That's really awesome.
Yeah, well, in the last, year and 3/4, it's all been Sarah and Karina
Mostly Sarah.
and Karen, right? Karen's been helpful with the
Yeah.
tree
Mhm.
information, the budget information, the plantings, the actual.
And historical with planting
Oh, that's right.
a couple of
Yep.
trees there too.
Yep.
Thanks, Kate.
Oh,
Team
my
effort.
pleasure. I had nothing to do with it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Excellent. Thanks very much, everyone.
Good night,
Have a
guys.
good one.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.